Call the special joint meeting of the Town Council and Board Education Committee to order for Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 at 6:05 p.m. Start first with salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Duty,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Here.
Councilor Candelora, Councilor Diamond,
Here.
Councilor Fawnin,
Here.
Councilor Miller,
Here.
Councilor Rose,
Here.
Councilor Viglione,
Here.
Councilor Zampano. Here.
Next item is discussion of state budget, revenue impact for current fiscal year and future budgets. Our state rep is here to enlighten us.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for my back to the audience, but I wanted to have an opportunity to update everybody on the budget and also to answer any questions. Aside from the revenue changes that were in the budget, there were some substantive changes to procedures for both the Board of Education side and the town side of the budget, and I thought we should start out with having a dialogue on some of these things that might be overlooked, but I think are important for the town and the board to pay attention to. First, from the revenue perspective, as you all know, I think you had discussed at your last meeting, there was an additional clawback of ECS dollars that the governor imposed on all towns, and I think it was somewhere in the $660,000 range. What had happened is that there were items in the budget that were what's called unidentified lapses, which is savings that is left up to the administration to find. The governor's office went after the ECS formula and took more money out of that to balance the budget. The intention that the legislature had were other areas, and the reason why we couldn't identify them in the budget was because we needed the actuarial numbers to be calculated and things of that nature. So although we had identified, I think it was like 35 million should be taken out of overtime, we had manager positions that we wanted to be cut. The governor chose to go in a different direction. So there is discussion tomorrow. We're actually meeting with the governor to talk about potentially trying to restore some of those clawbacks and make the cuts where we want them to be made and to direct that. So it's, I think, worst case scenario is the town should be assuming all of the current cuts, which is about, what, 1.1 million in this fiscal year going forward. And I think I know in your budget you had accounted for that, and I would just continue to. If the money is restored, I would recommend putting it toward a one-time capital expense or rolling it into next year. We do have an additional projected deficit of 200 million that we're dealing with. And again, it needs legislative approval. So it is my hope that we can work with the governor's office and not touch any additional aid. The only aid that's really left to roll out is ECS, so the education funding is always the most vulnerable. But what I also just wanted to go through, and I think if anyone has questions, just shout out if you want, and stop me at any time. I sort of wanted this to be a little bit informal.
Could I ask how
Sure.
many times can the governor keep going in and making changes? Isn't there a point where it's over?
So the governor has the ability to make up to 5% holdbacks of each agency when there's deficit, when the deficit is below 1%. Because the deficit right now is above 1%, it now requires legislative action. So the governor is going to need to make a proposal to us, and then we have to vote on that proposal. The governor could always, I guess, attempt to make other holdbacks, and in certain areas, so it's sort of open-ended. But I think because we hit the 1% threshold, you're not going to see him making any additional unilateral cuts. He's going to have to come to the legislature, is the easy answer, or short answer. And so what I just handed out for everybody for a summary is just a list of the budgetary changes that were made that don't necessarily affect the dollars, but could affect the bottom line and how we deal with things. Just quickly running through on the municipal mandate side, we no longer allow for all of the fund balance to be counted toward arbitration. So the arbiters now have to exclude 15% of the fund balance. Was sort of a compromise. Our hope eventually was to get as much of the fund balance excluded in arbitration considerations, because it's a one-time pot of money that really shouldn't necessarily be considered an ability to pay in arbitration awards. So that provision is now counted. One of the issues that we also addressed is the minimum budget reserve, and I think this is important for the Board of Ed and the town side, is that we no longer, if you're cut, say, $500,000 in education aid, the town could make that real cut next year, as opposed to where minimum budget reserve or minimum budget requirement requires that a town maintain its education funding from one year to the next. So if you're funding $20 million for education in 17, you have to fund $20 million in 18. What the government is now saying, if we cut you $500,000, you can reduce education aid by that $500,000 without being penalized from the state. And I think that's the significant piece, because there are towns that have made reductions because they had the ability to, class sizes, or you may close a school or something of that nature, and then the state penalizes you for good, fiscal practices. So this provision prevents that.
So that would be, so whatever we were cut this year on the budget?
It would be going into next year.
Then it's the next year?
Correct.
Okay.
The prevailing wage threshold for new construction is finally increased. So any projects that are above $1 million doesn't hit the requirement for prevailing wage. This one I think is significant for both county and Board of Ed for arbitration. They no longer have to, the arbiters don't have to take last best offer from each side. So if the town's offering a 0%, the union wants 5%, the arbiter isn't required to take one or the other. They can now look and meet in the middle, if that makes sense. So it's providing more flexibility in the arbitration process. Just to note too, for the municipalities, we've now increased the mill rate to 45 for the cap. So that means that for North Brantford, our car tax is going to flow through the town. You're not going to see a cap on it. You're not going to see any state money flowing through for above that amount of money. And then one other piece that I would hope the town's been notified, but Department of Consumer Protection is no longer responsible for administering bingo, raffles, bazaars. So applications are going to be made through municipalities now, and that would be through the police department, actually, that would administer any applications. So I did put a link there with detailed information as it rolls out on January 1st. I think there'll be more of an explanation. But that's another area you might get questions, because I know the public is still going to probably not know and apply to the Department of Consumer Protection and get kicked around, but it's going to be falling on local towns. And the rate structure, the fees, some of the fees do go back to the towns for the administration. For the education side, I think the first provision, one of the things what the state I think is looking for is more partnerships. So there are some laws that were put on the books to encourage it. I think some of them we could probably do under existing law, but I think going forward, we're looking at deficits into the out years, into the billions yet again. And I think there is a sense that we need to get towns to start working together with other communities and figure out how to share services. So the first section, let's see, the first item here and then the third item down, it's just allowing for these cooperative agreements. You could share for sharing personnel if those opportunities arise and things of that nature, mainly revolving around central office staff and administrative staff on the town side. It allows for districts to get together and share superintendents. That's provisions really made for the smaller districts. I mean, we have some communities, I think, that have, elementary schools. I think it was Woodbridge, and they have a superintendent as well. This would give them the ability to pull together in the region and share a superintendent. One of the provisions when the town needs to consult with the Board of Ed when they're purchasing property casualty or workers' compensation insurance. I don't know if we do that right now, but there's opportunities for savings. If we could pull that, this legislation allows for that to be done. And it is a requirement. It's a shall, but it says where possible. So it's a requirement, but not really. I think the state is good at writing things like that. One of the provisions, and I've put all the language in there. I know we've had issues with contracts. This, under state law, I think sort of clarifies the process and requires that contracts be filed with the town clerk's office and that Board of Education be notified, or excuse me, town councils be notified if there's any new hires on the Board of Ed side. I don't think that's happened in the recent decade, but I know when I used to serve on the council at times, you'd have mid-year hires. What this says is if the Board of Ed has any mid-year hires, and I think it's contracts in excess of 100,000, so it wouldn't be teachers, it would be more administrators, that they would need to notify the town council or the Board of Finance before that occurs. And then, just moving down the last page, I should have numbered these, but section 160, I guess, or 161, I printed out the language there. If the Board of Ed goes out for bid on goods or services, they need to consult with the town to see if the town is providing it cheaper. And is there an opportunity then to use the town service provider as opposed to the Board of Ed's? There may be circumstances, I don't know, in North Brantford, I think, but this provision, especially I think for the cities where there might be more bulk purchasing, it's an attempt to try to pull those products and services together on the board and the town side. And the last piece, I don't really know why it was in there. I think it was a request of a certain town, but if a Board of Ed must consult with the town before they purchase any payroll processing or accounts payable software to determine if it would be more efficient to purchase that software as a group. So that's a very specific provision. The last section that I just sort of wanted to alert everybody to is the ECS formula, and I threw it all on here. It's a bit complicated of a formula. I think after 12 years and being on all these commissions and budget meetings, I think I'm starting to finally get a handle on this. But in a nutshell, what's happened over the last decade is every time we did a budget, we always tried to hold towns harmless. So the minute there might have been, the ECS formula was being calculated, if it showed a loss to North Brantford, of course, I would go in and say, you can't cut North Brantford. So every year, towns were held harmless, and you would always get the same amount of money that you got in previous years. A lawsuit was brought in Hartford, and the judge determined that Connecticut needs to follow a formula. We're no longer following it. So right now, the state's appealed that. It's being litigated still. We may or may not win that case. In the meantime, the legislature felt that it was very important to put together an actual ECS formula that we're going to follow. This formula was negotiated among the caucuses. It made some changes, that will impact North Brantford and all the communities. And I wanted to make you aware of it because the way the ECS formula has been rolled out for the next 2 years, it also is not a full implementation of the formula. So in the first year, what we did is held towns harmless and just cut them 5% from the previous year. And that's where we ended up with the original roughly $450,000 cut to North Branford. It resulted in a 5% reduction in ECS aid. In the second year, the formula gets implemented, but only the formula gets fully implemented, but if your decrease is larger than a certain amount, the decrease is only implemented up to 25%. So in the second year, North Branford has a decrease, only 25% of that decrease is realized. And then for the next 10 years, no more than 8% gets added on until it's fully implemented. So potentially over the years, we can see a fluctuation in our education dollars. The formula is it's mathematical, so we could calculate that every year. But the downside is that, student enrollment is going to impact us, town wealth is going to impact us now. And just running through this formula, one of the things that impacted us negatively is, first off, the foundation amount stayed the same. It's about $11,525 per pupil in the state of Connecticut that's set aside. What we did was the guaranteed wealth level was lowered from 1.5 to 1.35. And that's how North Branford got impacted with a cut. What the guaranteed wealth level basically says, it's sort of on a graph. We target a percentage of money that we're going to make sure that towns receive no matter what. And the theory is that there are towns like Greenwich that might be very wealthy, but they're providing a lot of money to the state of Connecticut. They should be entitled to some sort of education funding from the state. In addition, if we're going to set education policy on a statewide level, we should be giving every city and town money. So that's sort of what that wealth index is. It was slightly reduced to 1.35. Fortunately, it was supposed to be a lot lower, and we were able to get it pushed up, which helped minimize our impact. What we're now doing is they're incorporating an income weight to it now. It's a 70-30%, so we're looking at property tax value, which is at 70%, and then there's an income wealth at 30%, which is now being incorporated. I think previously it was primarily the wealth factor was property. So now going to income, obviously that could impact communities. We're also, what was left the same is the free and reduced lunch calculation, but there's a higher weight. If 75% or more of your student population is on free and reduced lunch, you get an additional bump up of 5%, and I don't think that applies to our town. But there's also an added weight of 15% funding for English language learners. So for students that have English as their second language, there's a 15% bump up in the formula. And then finally, the base aid ratio portion doesn't really change, and it's really just a ranking on the most poor communities receive another bonus as a result. And that calculation, which I put in there just for your information, hasn't changed from previous years. So in short, I think what this all means is that the formula can become a moving target for us. So we do have the next 2-year projections, but in the out years, those could change. And so I put the calculations here. It's on the bottom of the second to last page, which just shows that what the rationale was. I'm going to try to simplify this, as I pointed out, but in example number 2, the way this reads is that we base it off of fiscal year 17 amount, And if the calculation between next year and the current year that you're receiving, if the difference is less than 25%, or I'm sorry, if you're receiving less money than last year, as I pointed out, your reduction is capped at 25%. And then there's a full rollout in fiscal years 20 through 28, which effectively would be about an 8% reduction, 8.33% reduction every year carrying out. So if we took the current projection of students in North Brantford and you rolled it out over 10 years, you could be looking at a gross number of about $1 million reduction in ECS over 10 years. So essentially, the governor's clawback would almost be a full implementation of what an ECS formula would look like. That's not the way it's going to roll out, and I just want to put this on everyone's radar screen because I don't think anyone's talking about it. But I think it's important for everyone to know that the number could change year to year. You know, if we have an influx of students, we get more state money, if that makes sense. And I think, you know, with that, I also just put on the last page just a summary of all the indexes of the ECS formula for everybody to take a look at. So I think with that, if you have any questions on it, I'd be happy to answer.
I always thought that part of the reason North Brantford got the large amount of ECS that we did compared to some of the other surrounding towns was because the Regional Water Authority took up a third of our property. It was not something that we could develop for, for tax. I'm wondering how that plays into this. It looks like this is simply based on student numbers and economic data.
So that is true. So the old ECS formula it was a 90% property tax calculation. So with the Regional Water Authority factored into our grand list, North Branford has a much smaller grand list than it normally would if it was able to develop all that property. So it gave us a bump up in ECS with a wealth factor, with having 90% of the property be part of that factor. This new formula creates a 70% factor. So now the grand list, only 70% of it's being considered. The other 30% of wealth is calculated by income tax. And so that's probably where that calculation would end up hurting us a little bit, because we're shifting to an income-based formula, which gives a little bit of a better picture. But fortunately, the grand list is still being weighted at a significant number, and as it should be. Yeah. I hope I didn't bore everybody with this. Yeah.
What about project choice or open choice students? Do they factor into this as our ECS student, or are they New Havens? Because I thought they used to actually get double paid for. I thought the sending town received ECS funding and the receiving town did.
So the open choice program, I think, is separate from ECS. Under our state budget, it's been funded separately.
But what about the formula for students? So the student wouldn't count?
The funding for open choice hasn't changed. There was a reduction to that program because I'm being told that not all the slots are being filled. So the state sort of zeroed out any surplus money sitting around. So that the dollars shouldn't change this fiscal year or next fiscal year for open choice. However, there is dialogue about that program as well as magnet schools. And I'll say there is a significant battle going on. I think New Haven has avoided this impact, but Bridgeport, there's a huge issue with the magnet school funding. I don't have my arms around all of it yet, but magnet schools get an additional bump up. They get money in addition to the ECS funding they're getting. There's some double dipping going on. The original proposal that we had presented, our caucus, put it all together and sort of put everyone on an equal playing field. I think as we roll forward, that's going to be part of the dialogue. But for the next 2 years, open choice hasn't changed. But also to the point of magnet schools, now the governor did claw back, I want to say 18 million in magnet school funding, which may end up having an impact on our district because I'm not sure if New Haven will try to charge our district for the tuition for those students because that money that was there was supposed to pay for the magnet school kids, and that was pulled out. So we could have a battle with that mid-year.
So the choice money will stay at $3,000 per student, at least over the next 2 years. And then for the ECS funding over 10 years, you're saying to recoup $1 million, that's, if it's $100,000 a year, it's 1 percentage point, or it's a portion of a 1 percentage point for us. So we'd have to recoup that $100,000 through either cuts or increases.
Over time, right.
Over 10 years.
Right, unless, if districts shrink quicker than ours, the fact that the dollars would change.
So towns, what do we get, almost $7 million in ECS funding. So towns that receive half or less than that, is there conversation of what benefit is it to us if it's a moving target, we don't know, there's too much unpredictability to try to move away from ECS? Do you see smaller towns that don't rely so heavily on it doing that?
I think that you may see smaller towns looking to regionalize, and that's a big push up there. So I think that's where the conversation would be. I think the ECS funding will stay. While it will fluctuate year to year, I will be able to get you numbers every year of what the funding is going to be.
Right.
And the target shouldn't be moving that much each year. So having a formula implemented shouldn't be an issue.
Because urban versus suburban, and you look at a town like North Brantford, with limited free and reduced lunch, don't qualify. You look at ELL, very small population.
Right.
We fall right in the middle. We're too large to not be able to do some of the things that they're requiring, but too small where we're not.
And that's the battle that we're having up there, and that's where, there are many of us that make that known to everybody about, when you talk about regionalization, it's not so simple with every district. And frankly, the discussion does revolve around Eastern Connecticut. There are some schools, as you know, that don't have a lot of student population.
Right.
So there could be significant savings there. I think rolling forward, this formula shouldn't impact us so badly that we say we need to regionalize. But I think we will, have to look at potentially if we could find efficiencies to continue to find them. I have an issue. I think part of the premise with this formula is, the initial foundation amount of $11,500 is wrong. We're not at the state level fully funding education.
Right.
So this formula only works if it's fully funded, which it still is not. And so that's going to be part of the discussion. And I think there's opportunities to reallocate funding. I think magnet schools and charter schools are going to be a discussion that we need to have. And I know the cities have different challenges, and we now have an ECS formula to address those challenges with English language learners and things of that nature. But to then give them charter school money, magnet school money on top, and it's big dollars, to the detriment of our towns isn't right. So, potentially if we're able to rework those numbers and pull the magnet school money into ECS to help fully fund everything, so each student is treated equally regardless of what school you go to.
It's a detriment to the public schools in those cities.
Right.
Because anything that goes magnet or charter, obviously, is excluding the school from
Right.
those public schools.
Unless you're in New Haven situation where they're all magnet.
Where they're all, right.
Which-
They're all free and reduced.
Right.
Every student.
Right. And that's where I think we don't have the issues that Bridgeport or Hartford has, because I don't believe they have all magnet schools the way New Haven does. No, you're it.
As you know, down the road, in the near future, we need to renovate as new our high school. What's the situation with facilities funding up there? Are we, did we miss our chance or?
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to. Part of the discussion up in Hartford is to create these standardized plans for towns to operate off of. And that has not been implemented yet. But I think the rollout will be that we're going to have sort of cookie cutter schools that towns operate off of. If you don't choose that school, your funding is impacted.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, to save money. The architects hate it.
We're living through it, I probably shouldn't say it.
Yeah.
But if there's a much more efficient way to design and build the school, and now the safety standards and ways to effectively educate students without bells and whistles.
Right. And that's part of where we're looking to go. But the funding hasn't been touched, but there is a hard cap on bonding right now of $1.9 billion annually for the town. The state, I think it's more than enough money for the state to operate, but it potentially could squeeze school construction project funding. There is jockeying that has gone on, but I think that if we're looking to do a project, we are in a position, I think, to be able to get funding for it, going forward. And I think, it may be a good idea for the town to take a look at it. I know we had funding for the roof and we did the roof repairs, but some of the renovations where the town is paying 100% of, if we do a state project, we're somewhere in the 50% range where the state would fund 50%. So there could be an opportunity there.
So with what you said about them coming up with, pre-designed schools, does it make sense for this board to look at budgeting for conceptual design, or is it something where we simply look at what they already have?
The difference between renovated is new and new site construction. You mentioned the roof, you put $1.5 million into your roof, and
But would you
think
yeah,
you're going to stay within that footprint.
I do too, but I'm wondering, one thing I had thought, and I hadn't brought to the full board yet, was I was wondering if we should start budgeting for conceptual design so that we had something to roll out to people. But now I'm wondering if you're saying that they're going to sort of mandate the types of things that you would do in our situation, so it wouldn't make sense to do a conceptual design?
Well, and I think we could follow back up with that piece of the conversation because I think it's new construction.
Okay.
And in our situation,
Yeah.
right, we're attached.
We have a
We'd love a
footprint.
blueprint.
Yeah, we have a
and
footprint,
we
so.
Right.
Stay within the parameters of that blueprint, and that would make.
So I would think that would be an exception, and we would just need to make sure that we would be okay doing it that way, but.
Okay, so then we could budget for a conceptual design for the
Yes.
renovated is new, do some of the things that we've been talking about doing.
And I'll make sure, I'll make sure that we're able to do that, and
Thank you.
I'll follow back up. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, just to add to that quickly, when we do start a project like that, I know in the past, we should have forms, there's a way to process.
Right.
So that reimbursement happens, so.
So that process has not changed.
Right.
Under the state, it's all been left intact, so it's the EDO 94 or something that gets filed. The only, the change was made years ago, and there's a nuance. I think it used to be you could submit it without a vote of the legislative body. Now it's required that the EDO 94 has to be voted on by the legislative body before it gets submitted to the state. But that change was done, 8 or 9 years ago.
But is there a format or a way that we could be educated from the get-go, so when we start the project, it's done properly all the way through?
Yeah, I certainly could get that information, and I know Don has access. They've changed State Board of Ed, and the State Board of Ed person retired last year, so, but we certainly get that information with everybody else.
Thank you.
Vin, do you think the debate on the motor vehicle tax and the cap is done, or are we gonna see that revisited every?
So I think you're going to see the motor vehicle issue revisited, but more for the cities than for our town. You know, the big issue is that you have towns like Waterbury and Hartford. You know, Hartford's mill rate is in the 90s, I think. So for somebody to own a vehicle in Hartford, it's cost prohibitive. So those issues are going to be debated this session. I think it's in the $40 million range. It's 4 communities. I think New London, Waterbury, Hartford, and Bridgeport. For North Brantford, I don't think it will change. And frankly, I think the best thing that we could do is get rid of this cap for municipalities and leave the towns alone and let them set the mill rate and charge accordingly. And so you know, that's why it was risen up to 45. We made sure that we rose it up to 45 mills to get as many towns out from under this mess. To move forward, because the sales tax revenue that was set aside to reimburse towns for that cap is gone, and it's not, I can't imagine it's coming back. So I think any debate is going to be for those 4 cities, and we're going to be returned to the old ways of doing it.
Good. And how about the renter's rebate, 50% now, but is that being passed on to the towns?
So right now it is the 50% cost, which it's about $21,000, is being passed on to North Brantford.
Yeah.
That program is going to have to be revisited. There are so many programs that are going to have to be revisited and consolidated, and I don't know how long they would continue necessarily and how they're going to be administered. I think the renter's rebate, it's funded for the next 2 years, and we'll see, what the economy looks like going forward. Part of the reason why that was really restored is these last minute changes to people that can't afford to absorb these changes. The state is trying to be make this as painless as possible. So I think we'll have more notice of reductions that are going forward, but there's not a willingness to pass anything else onto the towns. It's just going to create more tax increases.
Right. Thank you.
Yep. All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on to discussion on future budget strategies.
I just put that as a placeholder if there were other questions you may have for Representative Candelora in terms of the out years or future budgeting issues, but just a placeholder. I think he covered a lot, so I don't know if you have any additional questions.
Look for a pot of gold. All right, next is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Call the Water Pollution Control Authority and regular town council meeting to order for Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 at 7:06 p.m. We'll first start with the salute to the flag. Roll call.
Mayor Duty.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni.
Here.
Councilor Candelora.
Here.
Councilor Diamond.
Here.
Councilor Fawnin.
Here.
Councilor Miller.
Here.
Councilor Rose.
Here.
Councilor Viglione.
Here.
Councilor Zampano.
Here.
Okay, our town attorney's going to make a brief opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vincent Marino. I am a partner with the law firm of Cohen & Wolf, and was recently appointed as the North Brantford Town Attorney. I've been serving this capacity for just over a week. Members of the Town Council requested that I prepare and make a public statement concerning issues involving the superintendent, past policies and procedures of the Board of Education, as well as specific actions taken by past members of the Board of Education. The members of your Town Council take their responsibility to your community seriously. The Town Council believes that the public's trust in its local government is maintained through a system of transparency, public participation, and collaboration. Unfortunately, concerns have arisen about benefits being granted to the superintendent without board action in a public forum. The Town Council has been advised that prior chairman of the Board of Education routinely approved the extension of health care benefits and additional compensation for unused accrued time without full board vote and without public notice and meeting. I've been advised that past chairman took sole action with the mistaken belief that such action was appropriate because it reflected the will of the board. While I am new to this matter, I am confident in stating that the will of any public board or commission can only be determined by a vote of such body in public session. Action without a vote of the body politic is considered an ultra vires act. This means that if an act requires legal authority and it is done without such authority, it is invalid. The council recognizes that the charter charges it with the responsibility and the authority to investigate all offices and agencies of the town, and now finds itself in the uncomfortable position of seeking answers to these questions. If proven, these allegations, and I want to underscore that these are only allegations, could lead to this matter being referred to the state's attorney and/or the State Board of Education for investigation and possible action, and could potentially extend liability and/or culpability to individuals within our community. The council believes, however, that it should reserve the rights afforded to it under the charter and refrain from taking any action at this time. The council recognizes that a local municipal election took place just about a month ago. The Board of Education is newly constituted and should be afforded the opportunity to investigate these matters on their own without interference from outside forces. The Town Council appreciates that the Board of Education's review of this matter will not be quick, and we know that this process may frustrate some, but the Town Council believes neither it nor the public should jump to any conclusions. Rather, we ask the public, like the Town Council, reserve judgment and refrain from taking any action until after the Board of Education has completed its review and makes its decision known. The Town Council also appreciates that some of you may be here this evening because of concerns relating to the extension of the superintendent's contract. The decision concerning the superintendent's contract is wholly within the discretion and control of the Board of Education. The Town Council has no jurisdiction over that matter. Any concerns about the superintendent's contract should be directed to the Board of Education. But we ask that before you confront the Board of Education on this topic, you permit that board some time to conduct its review. We appreciate your patience and your understanding in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to minutes of previous meeting. The October 10th, 2017 special joint meeting with Town Council and Police
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioners.
I have a question, please, because I don't understand what just transpired with the town attorney. Speaking on behalf of the board, this was all new to me. I hadn't read that statement. I hadn't heard that statement. So to be speaking in the name of the council, I understand maybe speaking in the name of a majority, but that was a new bit of information for me, And while I don't necessarily disagree, I'm just baffled by that.
Well, I
People can't.
I asked him to basically summarize what we're looking at and what we're looking to do.
But it wasn't shared.
Right.
So
Excuse me.
that, you know, I'm just absolutely baffled that the board's attorney would stand up and say that the town council was on this. I, for one, am just gobsmacked. So,
Well, I mean, George, I'm not sure, like, if you're, like, wanting to politicize this or what, but I think, you know, he's basically trying to.
Anthony,
I-
believe me,
Listen,
I have
let me
no
just finish,
intention
George,
of
let me just
going that
finish.
route.
I listened to you, I just want to finish.
Mhm.
With all that has happened between being on the news and all the misinformation out there, I think he was just making a statement of what's transpiring, and that's it. I mean, so.
You know, again, Anthony, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
politicize a blessed
Yeah.
thing. What I am saying is that, you know, it's almost,
I mean, you did say you agreed with what he said. You didn't
well,
have
you
a
know,
problem
I
with
would
it.
have liked to have had
Oh.
some inkling that this was going to happen. I would have appreciated maybe the transcript that he read.
That was the first heard of it too.
It wasn't on the agenda. I'm just baffled because I don't understand how things are going. And, you know, again, anything that takes this particular process out of a political environment is a good idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I'm just really.
It was,
Sure. Fin-
if
Mike,
it was
Mike.
anybody's fault, it was my fault for not
Mike.
getting you a copy of that, but I
Mike.
just got it today. So, I just got it today, after he researched it, so.
Mike Bent wants to make a statement.
Mr. Mayor, may I try to clarify for you, and I apologize. It is on the agenda under item 12H as an agenda item, and the mayor felt that there was people from the public coming out, and instead of having them sit through the meeting to reach that point, that there should be something stated at the beginning so that people were not waiting for something that may be a non-event. So it was more out of a courtesy as to, I think, the timing. As to the sharing of information, that I can't speak to, but this was from my perspective, an 11 p.m. last night exercise that I went through. The point of it is, the primary point, and I think that there is a sharing of agreement, is that while the charter provides this body with an investigatory power, that the issue should be left to the Board of Ed to address in the first instance. And if they address it appropriately, then that's where it should lie. And that was really the point of it, so that it did not become a political hot potato, and also out of respect for the public, so that they were not sitting here to some point late in the meeting where we might get to address it under item 12H. And that's why the mayor had asked me to address it at the beginning, so I could speak to the timing of it. And it was more out of a benefit to, if people from the public could hear it, and then if they chose to stay, they could stay. If they did not, they could leave.
Well, you know, I'm back on page 1 of our, of the materials that were sent to us. Item 12H is listed as there is no background information to the following item. And when we arrive here, we typically have a folder of late blooming news, if you will, and there's nothing in here. So, again, I'm expressing my
appreciate it.
surprise. And certainly, you know, I'd like to participate.
So George, you know I'll always tell it like it is. So to take it from Obama, or some of you people at the last election, there are ramifications to winning an election. So, and I will read this email from Joe Fawnin, because I felt just like you, but got beat up by you guys for questioning it. So guess what, George? You know what? Here we go. From Joseph Fawnin to Michael Paulus. Mike, the Democratic members of the Town Council have set a meeting with Lou Paternoster for 6 o'clock in your conference room. Would you please leave the room open for us at that time? Now, because you were in the majority last time, or maybe just because I don't know what you guys were doing here, but you, the Democrats, were in control. They set a meeting. They were doing investigative work on this, and not one of the Republicans knew about it. So stop with your grandstanding that you are like all surprised now when you were gonna beat me up last time for questioning you. Okay? This is a fact.
That's bogus.
Al, it's right here.
That's what happened.
Mike,
So-
with the gavel.
Wow.
All right.
Out the vote, Stan.
Point of order.
Cares about the votes. Oh,
May I respond?
What's that?
May I respond?
please do.
Go ahead, I'd love to hear your response.
You characterized the meeting as an illegal meeting. Okay? And I take it, and I objected to that at the time.
But it was okay for you guys to have a secret meeting
Well-
and not tell the Republicans. So that's my point.
No, but see,
Okay.
but see,
You know what?
it's a question.
Point of order.
It's a question of how you're interpreting this as a secret meeting. 2 points, if I may. One is that I took your point as an illegal meeting as being a violation of FOI. I believe that's what you said. And you have in your packet today, I asked for it to be put there, the FOI statute and its definitions. And if you read the part on meetings, that meeting does not fit. So while you suggested it was an illegal meeting, and while we granted that it was in fact a meeting if you use the word generically, it was not a violation of the FOI. And since I know that at least some people, not to say it was you, but at least some people have contacted FOI and inquired, and since there's nothing on the agenda that suggests that we're being held responsible for violating FOI, I think it's in agreement with what I said initially, that it wasn't an illegal meeting. But there's a second point. We had a meeting with someone who could shed light on a problem that is indeed a problem in this community. And it's a problem with the Board of Ed, perhaps not our currently constituted Board of Ed, but a Board of Ed that goes back a long, long time. If you, the violations, and the attorney spoke to that, mentioned that. If you go back in the minutes of the meetings for the Board of Ed that are online, they only go back to 2003. But you'll find those type of violations back there in 2003. And I'm certain that's when Deputy Mayor Angeloni was on Board of Ed. And no shot, Rose, please. Because I don't believe that was just the way we
George,
did
you're
business.
preaching to the
Let me
choir.
just-
I have been calling this out for years, okay?
Well, I'm new to this.
So I've been doing
by
that
this.
for years. My point is, the Republican mayor, or if all 6 of us ask the attorney for something, is no different than you guys in control calling a meeting.
Now,
Okay, it's no
me-
different.
Let me
So
just
get over it.
address that second point, which I haven't yet gotten to. We had a meeting with someone who could shed light on
No, tell
on
me,
something.
we don't care what the meeting is. How is it different than what just happened to you? How is what you did different?
We were trying to get information, and he's speaking on behalf
We
of
were
the
trying to
coun-
give information.
No. He was speaking on behalf of the council as.
Well, you made a whole memo that you wanted to include with the thing going up to the state's attorney's office based for the whole council. So what's the difference, George?
It
That's
wasn't-
my point.
It wasn't voted on.
Well,
It
was
wasn't
voted on.
accepted.
There was a vote taken previous. By the
All right, we're not getting anywhere here. Is there any other point you want to make?
No, not at all.
Okay, then it's fine. The majority of the board is here, and they accepted, and they asked the attorney to speak, so that's where we are. All right, October 10th, 2017, special joint meeting, Town Council and Police Commissioners. Motion was made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
But I don't know if there was a motion.
Anthony,
Yes.
did you make that motion? Did I?
I believe I did make the motion.
Anthony made the motion?
October 10th.
Second?
But Bob can't, because he wasn't there.
Bob wasn't at that.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll second it.
Rose seconded. Roll call?
Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Yes.
Counselor Candelora,
Yes.
Counselor Diamond.
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Counselor Viglione,
Yes.
Counselor
You have to
Zam-
abstain, Bob. You weren't at that meeting.
Counselor Zampano.
Abstain.
Okay, next is October 17th, Town Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Yes.
Counselor Candelora,
Yes.
Counselor Diamond,
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Counselor Viglione,
Abstain.
Counselor Zampano.
Abstain.
All right, next is October 25th, 2017, special Town Council public hearing, 1599 Foxen Road.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Abstain.
Counselor Candelora,
Yes.
Counselor Diamond.
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Counselor Viglione,
Abstain.
Counselor Zampano.
Abstain.
Next meeting is November 14th, 2017, Water Pollution Control Authority and regular Town Council organizational meeting.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Yes.
Counselor Candelora,
Yes.
Counselor Diamond.
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Counselor Viglione.
Yes.
Counselor Zampano.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move into the Water Pollution Control Authority agenda. First item is correspondence, citizen statements. None. Unfinished business, change ordinance regarding 1565 Middletown Avenue sewer, sanitary sewer extension.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to explain that actually is in the wrong spot on the agenda. The Water Pollution Control Authority had actually done its business and sent it to the council. It should be an item that should be listed on unfinished business. You may, if you like, amend the agenda to do so tonight, but I would suggest that it actually needs more time as well for the new town attorney to take a look at that. There are some comments that you directed Kurt Weiss to take a look at. I don't believe they've had enough time to take a look at that, and I'd suggest that the council defer that until the 19th, and I'll bring it back in the appropriate spot.
So we'll just defer to the 19th.
Yep.
All right, under new business, Water Pollution Control Authority, there's None listed. Citizen statements and petitions on the Water Pollution Control Authority. We'll move into reports of boards.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Last week it was brought up, is this a place that we only can talk about water pollution control
Yes.
stuff?
Yes.
Okay. There is stuff that's gonna happen concerning me, but I don't know if it's before or after the next public statement for 944 Tucket. It's okay, I'll come back at number 9 then, thank you.
Next, we'll move into the regular town council meeting. Reports of boards, commissions, and committees.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add item J under this topic 7, pension committees.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni,
Yes.
Counselor Candelora.
Yes.
Counselor Diamond.
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rose,
Yes.
Counselor Viglione,
Yes.
Counselor Zampano.
Yes.
Economic Development Commission?
They met last night. I was not able to attend, but I do know that the commission did participate in the First Impressions program, Economic Development Exchange with the town of Coventry, and that went very well. There is some economic data, if you will, or I should say there are the survey and responses that's available that I can pass on to the council. I think it'd be interesting for you to see the comments from council members, or actually citizens of the EDC. Now, I don't think there were any council members from the town of Coventry, but members of the Economic Development Commission and their survey of the town, so I'd be happy to pass that along. I know there was a number of other items, and maybe we can bring that for the next meeting.
Thank you. Park and Recreation Commission?
Park and Recreation met last week. One of the items that they discussed, that they voted on back in October, was the naming of the fields, Memorial Coulter, and the tennis courts, and that is an item agenda under Town Manager's report. And they also discussed field usage for next year and some changes that they need to make to their forms. This year they had some issues with teams playing on the field and actually doing damage to the fields, and then we would have to repair them for Annie's department. And so they're thinking of adding a field use person designated by each sport so that they would be in contact and strengthening their language a little bit as far as responsibility for any field damage. They also experienced trouble with garbage pickup at all of the fields during the year. They've had conversations with the contractor, which is John's Refuse, and they are looking to put information together and have a meeting between the town hall, John's Refuse, and Park and Rec Department to get that issue resolved before spring season starts next year. That's it.
Police Commission?
Next Police Commission meeting is Monday, December 11th.
Fire Commission, next meeting is Thursday. Board of Education and Town Council Communications Subcommittee?
There's no meeting. We're just waiting for their committee appointments, and then we can get together and get a schedule for next year.
Thank you. Town Plan and Goals Subcommittee?
No meeting.
Public Safety Communications Committee?
No meeting.
Planning and Zoning Commission?
Planning and Zoning has an open public hearing on farm breweries. They had their first a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and it was continued. So it's still under discussion, and the next meeting is this Thursday, the 7th.
Thank you.
Excuse me. George, have they reviewed the text amendment at all that was discussed on that?
Yes, they did partially, but they weren't satisfied that they had fully reviewed it, and that's why it's, and they took testimony, and they left it open. So they'll be continuing it for this Thursday. And my suspicion is that they'll be able to close the public hearing.
Vince, were you able to weigh in? Did you weigh in on that text amendment on the farm breweries? I remember you had sent.
Yes, I said comments on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and they acknowledged those comments, Anthony.
Okay.
They were discussing the comments and they had received them prior to the meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Next is Esure Health District.
Who is on that?
Me.
Anthony, is it?
Me. I believe there's a meeting this week, Thursday.
So, I know down at the south end of town, there's been some complaints against the Brantford company for sandblasting concrete. And I do know that East Shore Health has been made aware of it, and they've brought in Deep. So I think as a town council, they ought to be reporting back to us on the status of that. So if you go to that meeting, bring that question up.
And it's sandblasting.
Yeah, it drifts over the southern half of the town, and it is a pretty well-known carcinogen.
Next item is Pension Committee.
The Pension Committee, for those new members and members of the public that may not be familiar with it, meets quarterly. It predominantly deals with town employees that are giving notice that they are retiring and seeking their pension benefits, and secondarily, it looks into the performance of the pension fund, which is administered by a professional broker from, Anthony, who was he with? From Morgan Stanley, who has been servicing the town pension fund for quite a number of years. I'm not sure exactly how many. Over the last year or so, the fund has not actually lost money, but it is not making money. And while the market has done remarkably well since the fall of last year, many of us on the committee have started questioning the lack of performance. We convened a special meeting with the fund advisor last Wednesday, Rose?
Right.
Last Wednesday, and basically expressed our misgivings and asked for his recommendations. His recommendation was essentially stay the course. That may or may not be the right course of action to take. However, at this time, we are considering what alternatives may be open to us, with Anthony investigating plans that are administered by the state of Connecticut and communicating with other towns regarding what their pension plans are doing and what they're invested in. And we're waiting for Anthony to get back to us with some additional information, at which point we, in all likelihood, will convene, come back with a more concrete recommendation to the town council as to what, if any, course of action we should take going forward.
Joe, do you know, is that money being invested like in a money market or in bonds? Like, how are they investing?
There are essentially 4 different investment vehicles. And while I don't want to mischaracterize what they are or what they do, they were presented to us as funds that are uniquely defensive in nature. They provide the opportunity to take advantage of trends in the market and profit from that. That has not happened in a market that has gone up probably 12 to 15% in the last year. So because of that, we've expressed some concern. Our investment advisor is adamant that this is the appropriate investment to be in. His analysis is based on what he sees as trends in the world economy and what he perceives as a likely downturn, a steep downturn or correction in the market in the near future. That is the same advice we've been getting for about a year, and it is giving us some concern. So I would really if you want to get the precise nature of the investments, Anthony would be in a better position to give you the name of the funds and what specifically they invest in than I would, but there are four different vehicles, so to speak, that we invest in.
So how is it determined, or who makes the determination on the investments, or when to move or do that?
It's done based on a recommendation from our advisor, who usually will give us his rationale for, not usually, always gives us his rationale for why it's appropriate to make an adjustment in our investment portfolio. And then it's a vote of the entire panel.
So basically, we're going solely off the advice, basically, of this.
I'm sorry, say that again.
We're basically going off of the advice of this person we have hired.
I'm
or-
pretty sure no, not always, but we largely follow his advice, but there have been times when we have either not followed his recommendation to the T, or there may have been instances where we declined to make a change that he was suggesting. But largely, we do follow his recommendations. He's the professional.
Sure.
So Joe, so the people in the room know what we're talking about. Roughly how much money is in our fund, and what did we make, and what did it cost us? What does this guy get paid, or Anthony? I mean, so is it somewhere around 11 million?
Correct.
And we made,
It's actually
I'm
about
hearing
12, I think.
point 26%?
It was minimal.
0.26% of a percent. So, but did that cover his fees for managing our money?
That's net. Net of the
That's
fees.
net after we paid him. So we're paying this guy to do that with our money.
As you probably are aware, investment advisors usually paid a percentage of what they have under their supervision. But
And
not
this,
only is
this
him, it's the
really,
funds
none
as
of
well.
this has, like, what, the town council has nothing to do with this, right? We vote on what?
Well, town council sets the investment policy statement, which dictates the asset allocation, which the pension committee then follows and based on recommendation of the.
Have you
advisor.
heard from, I mean, or is that what towns are making? 0.26%?
No, the other towns that I've spoken with have made significantly higher returns, especially in this past year. In 15, 16, it was kind of uniformly that it was a terrible market period, but in 16, 17, a lot of towns had significant returns, and we didn't enjoy those returns, as Councilman Fawnin has alluded to.
Okay. But I agree, Joe, sooner or later, the guy's gonna be right, and there's gonna be a big downturn. So, we stick with him a little longer, you
Thanks.
know?
And next, we'll move into the town manager's report. Review of former sign from Memorial Field, Coulter Field, and review of tennis courts.
Yes, I put together a memo, but as Deputy Mayor Angeloni had suggested, had said and stated, the Park and Recs has reviewed this, and I put together I think I had some information that they passed along in terms of the articles and the history, with also a photo from one of the local authors who put together a story on North Brantford, or a profile of North Brantford, and includes a picture of the actual sign that was dedicated. And so, you know, I think it's one of two ways we can go, you know, to have the Park and Rec to look at costs for redesigning and putting another sign out, and getting that into the budget process. Or I think you should all have a copy there. We had talked about in the past the tourism funds that we have for the other signs we were talking about, for what we call the entrance signs or gateway signs to the town. There are funds in there that could be pulled to do this particular sign, or you could choose just to use the money for the entrance signs and put this into the budget, get a figure, and work with the Rec Commission on how large that sign would be and where it would be. Or maybe you break it up into three different signs, because you have the Memorial Field, you have Coulter Field, and you have the tennis courts. So wasn't sure where the council wanted to go on this, but just wanted to raise the issue for a future item, and maybe take a look at the direction of how you want to fund it.
Move on, preparation
Well, are we
You
going
want
to?
to address it, or you want to think about it first?
Well, I mean, the issue is not so much the naming, because it was named back in 1963. So it's already been named. And I think that was part of the issue that came before us at the last time was we already knew Memorial Field in Coulter, but a number of us did not know, how is it pronounced, Regluth courts. So now that issue is off the table because it was already named that and we're not renaming it, it's just really the matter of the sign in regards to that. At the Park and Rec Commission meeting also last week, they also discussed signage because there's a number of parks in town that the signage either is not there any longer or it needs signs. And we had discussed the whole issue of having consistency among signs within the town. So I think, you know, we're not making a decision tonight on exactly the signs and how it's going to look and what's going to be done and where the funding is coming from. I think it needs to go on the next agenda item. And one of the commissioners from Park and Rec, he works in North Haven as Public Works Director, and he has provided Lauren with some information about the sign company that they use in North Haven, which is quite reasonable. I do not know the material that the signs are made out of or anything like that. Because one of the other issues that they talked about, which we had talked about, was the maintaining of the sign, you know, having a company sponsor. So is that something, you know, is that, we have to make a decision. Is it EDC, is it the town? Is it going to be on the park signs or just the entrance signs?
Are you talking about maintaining the signs for the fields, for the courts, or are you talking about for the entryway signs?
Well, that was a discussion that they had, is when we talked about this at the council, you know, prior to just the entryway signs, a year ago, we talked about, Franny had mentioned about the park signs, the entranceway signs, you know, any signage in town.
It's almost 2 years now, darn close.
Yeah, it could be that long.
And we were talking at the outset of the gateway signs and the field signs.
Correct.
And looking to standardize them.
Correct.
In format.
Right.
But somebody has to, you know, honcho this. You know, we had some suggestions from some rather expensive sign shops.
Right, and that's what Park and Rec, when the information that was given to Park and Rec with a company that is used in North Haven for their signs, the cost was substantially less. But like I said, I don't know what they're made out of. You know, I don't have any of that. They didn't have all of that information. So, you know, we're not going to make a decision on it tonight, but I think it needs to be on our next agenda so that we have time to gather some more information and we can get this information from Park and Rec and we can talk with Carrie Duquesne to get more information so that we can move forward.
Absolutely, because the couple of signs that we did have at gateways were in rather poor condition.
Right, and some of our parks, you know, the issue is that
Some of our parks don't even have signs.
Don't have signs, so-
That's what brought it up.
so when you
But
know,
we were talking about this again, it's almost 2 years now.
when
And,
visiting
uh,
teams come or whatever, they don't,
yeah.
there's no signage, so they don't know where to go
Sure.
in the town. So
Don't you
that
think
was
it's
what
important that we start with the entranceway signs first, make a decision on those, and then let the others follow? I think we need to make that decision.
Well, the entryway signs have to be done, but it's also important that these park signs, and I think it's a good idea to have the Park and Rec Commission pick a sign, bring it back to us, so we can compare that to the gateway signs coming into town. So we don't have 2 or 3 different style signs.
Who's responsible for the signs?
Well, that was also.
That's another issue.
I mean,
on-
because to
Park
me,
and-
why don't, if it's Park and Rec come up with 2 or 3 or 4 solutions and present them and what the cost is for each one of them?
And the town council basically is looking at the entry gateway signs, you know, so That's why we want to see if we could both agree.
And did we also decide on whether or not we want to have sponsors for those signs, like North Haven does, which probably helps a lot with the
Right,
cost?
and North Haven did, on their signs, they did start out, it was economic development that did it, but after a few years, it fell to the wayside and it came back to the town. So either I don't know if EDC wants to take that on, I mean, or do we just make it, that someone in the town's department?
Carrie Duquesne did give us information on that because of where these signs are going with the DEP. I don't believe that we're able to do that because it's not all on town property.
Well, the ones that are, there is some DOT regulations
Right.
that we have to follow because of where
Right.
the signs are, they're on state highways.
Yeah.
And there's only a few signs we're replacing too with decorative signs.
Right.
Because we don't have the space for,
Correct.
so.
But aren't we talking about two different things?
Yeah,
Well,
we
we're
are.
trying to bring the entrance
many
signs
meetings
together
do we
with a
have?
uniform standardization, but also incorporating, within the park signage, so that we're not having different,
Right, there's the signage and there's the sponsorship. So yes, there's two different
Right.
things. So it's either we do the sponsorship or we just have the town
I think the
maintain them.
sponsorship was a state program as well. So,
That I don't know.
if I remember the way it was presented.
Yes, you're right, George. In some towns, there has been a state sponsor for some signs, and for our signs, and looking at North Haven, I think it was, and a few other, or Orange, I think it was. I think, Rose, you're right, it was this 2-3 years, everything's fine. There are sponsors and there's management, and then it just sort of loses interest and loses sponsorship after a few years, and it just came back to the town. So I think that's the sort of the concern, that we're going to end up with it, anyway.
Right, but define the field and define the town are two different things. I mean, we may not have a nice, beautiful sign coming down Route 80 entering the town, but we do have little green state signs so everyone knows they're entering North Brantford. But when someone's trying to find a ball field and there's no sign, so I think we're trying to tie two things together that might not tie together, or don't have to tie together.
Well, the only thing that ties together is the uniformity of the signs. That was
That was the point.
That was
the whole point
That
at
was
the
the idea.
beginning.
was
Yeah.
that the signs were uniform in nature. But as far as the order we do them in, that can be whatever we choose.
I have a question. As for Park and Rec, so do you want to look for designs, or I'd rather wait till the town approves their design and then have ours similar if you look at the uniformity?
Well, we're looking for an idea from.
I have ideas, but then it might not be uniform to what you're looking at.
And if I could say something, Carrie
No.
is looking into signs for the town for sponsorship, like they do in North Haven. So she is in the process of looking at that. We did talk about this briefly at the EDC meeting last night. So she's in the research mode for town. But if you want the two organizations to work together, most certainly we could do that.
That would be
So
good.
if you want to give us that directive, I'm sure we both have no problem.
Yeah, because Carrie has an idea of what the council was looking for from our last couple meetings ago. And if Lauren and the Rec Commission could, basically get an idea of what North Haven's got from your commissioner,
I
and,
have designs already.
yeah, and the monetary cost, it would be great. And then just get it to Michael. Thank you. Next item is preparation of bid on food supply for the Recreation Department.
Yeah, this is one of those issues I'm working on right now. I just want to give you a heads up that I hope to have ready for the meeting on the 19th, of working with Lauren and Purchasing Department, and came across the fact that I don't think it's ever been bid out, and the threshold is probably close to $7,500, $10,000 that we do in terms of purchasing for the kitchen up there. And it makes a lot of sense, I think, to look at, talk with the school on their side to see what they're purchasing, if we can just jump onto there or be, merge with their process and what they purchase. Otherwise, I think we're at a point where we need to send this out and bid it out. So I'm in the process of reviewing that. So if there are any, certainly welcome any comments or thoughts that the council may have, but I'm going to try and get that ready for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Well, I think it would be a good idea to try to bundle it, with the school. Mike, if
Yeah.
you could maybe work with Mike Auger possibly, I
Yeah.
think it would make sense.
Yeah,
to
I'm
try
definitely going to
save
reach out
money.
to see what
Or
they
just
have on their end.
Don, maybe Don just piggyback onto see what the school
Right.
is allowed.
Yeah,
I mean, basically, it's for the senior program, right?
right.
Well, and what Vinnie talked to us about at our prior meeting, at the 6 o'clock meeting, about, the joint ventures between Board of Ed, and there's more leeway now with the legislation. And so I think there probably is room to do that.
Yeah, as long as our needs, I'm not sure what they buy, but you're buying food. I mean, it should hopefully.
Well, it's the
we're
same
gonna be-
vendor, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
It
think
might be a
they're
difference of
difficult.
the deliveries or
Probably
quantities and
picking
so
off
forth,
the
but-
menu, yeah.
Yeah, I think we can, I'm gonna certainly reach out and see if it's a viable option, I hope.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, update on the North Branford Police Department phone system.
Yeah, I don't have any information other than that that's a work in progress, and again, hope to have that ready for the 19th. The interesting issue there is, as you know, you heard from Lieutenant Lovelace on their system. In talking with Fran, the public works system is aging, and I don't think the phones are I don't think he can find phones for his system. So at some point, his system's going to be, if not already obsolete, he won't have phones for that. So I'm thinking of maybe looking at Jim's system and what he's doing, and maybe an ad alternate for Fran, just to get a number for Public Works. I'd hate to miss an opportunity here, and he, a year from now or 2 years from now, the phone system goes down, and he can't get any phones. So, and it's a small, I think, it's very small compared to the police department, but I think it might be worth exploring. So I'm working on that, and hopefully that'll come back and be ready for the meeting on the 19th as well. And the same goes for the next item. Item D is
Update on the generator for
yeah,
Company
just
One.
getting that ready for you for the 19th. Is still a work in progress. We also have submitted a grant. Jim Buck is working on submitting for funding for a generator through. Anthony, can you help me with the title of that? FEMA, and that's not FEMA. Is that?
State, Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security.
Right.
DEMIS grant.
DEMIS grant. So, somewhat optimistic about that. Long shot, but we're going for it, and we're going to put that in and see if that can help fund one of the generators we're looking at for, in this case, for emergency management at the PD.
Okay.
Before we get off of that, I saw on the news, I think it was tomorrow night, what's the public hearing about the water company's big project, and is it tomorrow night? And where is that? So there was like a $15 million project in North Brantford, and there was a public hearing tomorrow night. Do you know anything about that, Kurt?
At the RWA. I know that they're doing a pipeline tunnel
Repair.
program from the lake over to the treatment facility. They had a leak, and they're, I don't know if the $15 million is their, they have a short-term.
Yeah, that was their bypass repair. This, I think this was a new,
I think they
a
may
new
look-
project.
and I'm not sure, I just saw it in the paper too, and maybe the long-term, looking at, they also talked about they may look at some point doing another tunnel, and I'm not sure if that is included in it or not. I honestly don't know.
Okay, but it's
I know-
not in this town, but it's about this town.
Well,
The public hearing.
yeah, I mean, it's through the water authority, it's a funding thing that they have.
Okay.
You have the bonding part.
Okay, next item is community events and presentations. Seeing none, we'll move into citizen statements, petitions, and correspondence.
Cliff Potter, 1251 Middletown Avenue. I want to pass out some information, then I'll discuss what I need to discuss.
Mr. Mayor, while he's passing that out, back to item 9 for a second. There is the Santa breakfast is coming Saturday morning at MBIS. I believe it's 8 to 11, that neighborhood.
Thank you.
That's a good wording.
Right. You've been naughty or nice?
Thank you.
I don't know if I should take this exhibit. Not sure. 10 pages.
Anybody have doubles? Well, I'll share this after I finish. I noticed the agenda was approaching down in the bottom, 944 Tucket Road again. Kind of a sore, it's my living hell, it's my living heaven right behind my house. As you can see, I'm going to go through the pages with you. Page 1, this is for the new council members who aren't familiar with this. The rest of you, I'm sure. But I felt, I had talked to Mike this morning, and he's going to be looking up for some information from you further on down. But I felt the new members were blindsided if they have to make a decision on something they're not familiar with. So I felt the best thing for me to do is present it again. I mean, we didn't get too far with the last town attorney. Strictly rumor, I'm not going to mention names, but there seems to be a buyer. That hasn't been confirmed this morning by the town manager. If a private citizen comes in control of this property, I have lots of questions on how you're ever going to solve this problem and how you're ever going to regulate this problem. So if you start with page 1, you'll see the massive flooding that goes on in my yard in heavy rain. And also, if you go to page 2, more flooding right next to my property, which bleeds over. This is all caused by the actions of the former occupant, the Koplik family, who completely altered the land, filled in a pond, took out fill, changed the topographic area. Page 3 shows where he had a pond originally on his property on a document that the town has here. Page 4 shows an overhead, and I apologize for the quality of the pond. You can see it on an aerial photo. A very poor, that's why I circled this so you could find it. Page 5 shows you why the pond is gone, because you'll see tons and tons of chips in that aerial photo. That's where the pond used to be. He has raised the topographic level, filled in the pond, and so now that water has nowhere to go except my backyard. Page 6 is kind of looking towards where the pond was. You can see the chips are piled higher than the grass. Now, I included a picture of page 7. I'm not going to mention names, but you'll recognize possibly the truck in that picture. That truck is dropping construction debris into the area. That truck is owned by someone who's possibly somehow going to possibly buy this land. My concern is if that group helped destroy the land by adding illegal fill, how can they turn around and legally put a bid on the property if they're violators? It's the same family. So you got one part of the family filled in with this construction debris, and if you go to page 8, you'll see the construction debris up by the house. Now the gentleman, if you look closely, he's on his bulldozer. As soon as the construction debris is left, it's leveled out and sometimes covered up. That has never been taken out. But I felt it was important because to the new members here, you might have to make a decision on who buys this property. My question is, can somebody buy property if they help pollute it? Is that legal?
The bank.
It seems like a conflict of interest.
Exactly.
And I'll let Michael go with the names and all the information you need. I'm not personally attacking anybody in town, I'm just trying to protect my property. So you can see by the pictures, there's always been issues, and lots of them. Let me go back. And it hasn't been taken care of. It hasn't been taken care of by the last town attorney. We've got a fresh, new, wide-awake attorney here.
Thank you.
And some people will know why I said that, but I'm sorry. I've been burnt too many times. If you look at the next page, number 9, you'll see the gentleman on top of his bulldozer leveling out the debris. And at the bottom there, you'll see some of the debris. You see an oil tank, you see tires. I don't think any of that ever came out of that property either. So again, it's not to make things miserable, it's to show you, the new members, when you have to make a decision within the next hour or so on something you've never seen before, think about how my property is being detrimented by this mess. The last page is something we had worked out with Mike and Carrie and everybody while we still kind of had the bank on hook. The bank owned this property. It may still, we still haven't figured out whether they do or not. But somehow, some way, it might have slipped out of the bank's hands into a resident's hands. We haven't been able to confirm that, have we, Michael?
There's no date.
Okay, so I want to know, is there some way we can legally stop this from happening? I don't know if the private resident is going to be able to afford this. And like I told Michael as he walked out of one of the last council meetings, you're going to own it again. If this private resident cannot do everything that's required to clean up this mess, they're going to walk away, and then you're going to own it again. I don't want it to come to that. I want the water in my yard stopped too, but I want what's right for the town at the same time. I mean, you guys do all you can to balance budgets with no money. I mean, I get that, and I'm not looking for fast resolution. The other town attorney harassed me because it's been 18 years. And he said, well, you haven't gotten anything done in 18 years, have you? I said, no, I'm a patient man, but don't push it. You know, I don't want to be sending out golden 20th anniversary invitations to this thing.
Cliff, I made sure we sent it to the town attorney. He's
Yes.
only been here 2 weeks.
Oh, I know
so
that.
We got to give him a little time to look at it. He's
But-
got your complete file.
But I want to know, I can't get answers.
I don't have a but answer yet.
Okay, but is there some way we can stop it in the bud? That's my concern.
We have to wait for him to make his
Okay.
decision.
And if it does go through, now we have a whole new set of circumstances we got to work
It
out.
hasn't gone through yet. So
Yeah,
we
and
gotta-
I know, but
we
I
got-
heard, you know.
We
I'm
got to
looking.
give our town attorney time to look at it.
I
He's
understand.
got
I'm a little
your
gun shy,
file.
Mike. I had a long
I
summer.
realize that.
Okay, thank you.
That was the first 2 days
I
he
know
was
you
in
did,
here,
and yes.
we gave it to him.
You know, I appreciate the fact that you made me well aware that you were still on this, and I do appreciate it. I mean, this isn't a personal vendetta. It's not a personal attack.
I realize that.
I just want what's right, that's all.
Ms.
And I
Mayor?
do appreciate it.
Just point of information, I will be holding office hours on Wednesdays between 10 and 12.
Okay.
I would just request that tomorrow you give myself and the town manager an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then maybe next week, if you wanted to come
Oh, I'd
in,
love to be there.
I would
Love
be
that.
happy to give you some time.
Only 2 hours? Is 2 hours enough?
Well, for 18 years, we can get it done in 2 hours.
Oh, wow, good. Okay, I appreciate it. I'll check with Michael and we'll get something going. Thank you.
Thank you. See that? You got your first appointment.
Yeah, that was great.
Marcia Onofrio, 14 Fox Hill Drive, Northford. Last week, the Board of Ed had a workshop with Tom Hennick from FOI. Ironically, at the same time, the Town Council held a special executive session. One agenda came out initially, and 24 hours in advance, the agenda changed, and it was a different item. I know your meeting went on over 2 hours because I was waiting for someone after the meeting. Based upon the agenda that was posted, I'm not really sure what you could possibly talk about for 2 hours over that. But let me just say, if something was discussed, and I would never ask anybody because I respect executive session confidentiality. If anything was discussed that was not specific on that agenda, it's an FOI violation. If anybody was mentioned by name, the superintendent by name, board members by name, the private citizen by name, and they weren't notified and had the opportunity to hold it in public session, it's an FOI violation. So when you guys are sitting there telling us what we did wrong and all the things that we did wrong, make sure you're following every rule as well.
Hi guys, Colby O'Rourke, 18 Carlin Drive in Northford. I apologize for staring at my phone, but I just drafted some notes and I tend to go off task if it's not written. I just wanted to make a statement, as I believe the town attorney spoke based on the information that was given to him. I do not believe he had all the facts. The Board of Education did vote in public session at a special meeting held on August 31st. The board at that time voted to approve the payment of the unused vacation time. The public vote was done on the recommendation of Sarah Quarefield. It seems like communication lines are crossed, as the board chair stated she would not extend the superintendent's contract due to a non-existing pending state investigation. Now, 2 weeks later, we are hearing from the town attorney that there'll be no state investigation and that the Board of Education will investigate. What exactly will the current Board of Education supposed to investigate? Their own actions? Policy changes were being implemented back in August to prevent board chairs from agreeing to open and revise contracts on their own moving forward, a practice that, as Mr. Miller states, has been going on for many years. Perhaps, after hearing the town's attorney's statement, the Board of Education should reconsider revisiting Scott's contract at the December meeting. Clearly, as the town attorney has explained, the Board of Education is under investigation, not the superintendent. One thing to note, I think the town council should be concerned that a current board chair has made a statement in public session that she refused to extend a contract due to a pending state investigation that is non-existent, because public statements like that will affect our town when lawsuits for slander are filed.
Sarah Quirfeld, 42 Valley Road. I would like to clarify that I said I would not vote to extend the contract from June of 2019 to June of 2020. I did not at all talk about non-extending or anything other, actually non-renewing, I believe she said. It's simply whether to extend from June of 2019 to June of 2020 while we are in the midst of this investigation, which I believe is now back in the board's lap.
Hi folks, Dan Arman, Chidsey Drive. I did just want to say that, you know, the issue of illegal meeting has come up now 2 meetings in a row. And the attorney asked the public to not pass judgment, but certain town council members passed judgment without a proper investigation and ignored information that I and some other town council members gathered regarding the board's past behavior and activities. And then, you know, Al, you called it an illegal meeting when nobody ruled that it was an illegal meeting. So,
So Dan, to clear that up for you, we're not done visiting this yet.
Yeah, but you know what?
Okay.
You're not the authority that determines
You're
whether
absolutely right.
that an illegal meeting happened or not. So until then, an illegal meeting didn't exist. But my problem is, it seems that you've ignored the information that we brought to you that didn't fit your narrative, and that's the problem. So I would like you just to, you know, explore all.
Wait a minute. The narrative that was followed was the board chair that you interviewed or interrogated was one of the major people that gave out benefits without a board vote.
He was one of many board chairs that did that.
Right. So why are we going to interview somebody that might be investigated? That certainly doesn't sound right.
Well, you did call for a meeting, Mike. You did call for a meeting.
I did call for a meeting, and then he called me, and he told me what he did. So I said, at that point, why am I going to interview somebody that just gave away the benefits without a board vote?
Yeah, you have a past sitting board chair right here that did the same thing, Mike.
That was we're talking about one superintendent. What was done in the past for different superintendents, how they were negotiated, or what
No, it's
happened
completely,
then?
that's completely,
As soon as this superintendent came in, he got a contract.
the
Any
board's
change-
practices did not change with Scott.
As
They
soon as
existed the
as
same
soon-
way with
listen,
Wolf as
listen.
well.
As soon as Scott came in, he got a contract. Okay, any changes to that contract, there's no past practice. Past
Absolutely.
practice is unions. There's no
Where, in our
past
town?
practice. There's
When
no.
it comes to contracts, that's
Listen,
not
you
the
go
case.
into a company and they hire an executive.
No, we're talking about the Board of Education
Right.
and their behavior on how they manipulated the superintendent's contracts, health benefits, compensation. It did not, the board did not start doing that with Scott. It was doing that previous to Scott.
No, but they're.
And we have proof
they're-
of that, Mike.
Listen, they're continuing with Scott.
The problem
And
isn't
this-
Scott
this
then, the
council-
problem
this
is the
council-
board.
This council directed the board chairs not to do it anymore. We got an opinion from the town attorney that it is not proper to do that. It's-
Everybody in the room
without a-
probably would agree.
Without a board vote, you can't do it.
Right, and
We're
I'm not
just,
disagreeing with
we're
that, but
just
what I am,
trying, we're just trying to keep the funds. You know, you got a serious amount of money being paid in health benefits to the superintendent.
I understand
You got a
that, too.
serious amount of salary being
Is
paid
that
to
what we're
the
talking about
superintendent.
here? Or are we talking about accusing Scott of doing something illegal or wrong?
Nobody's.
And not the Board of Education and
No-
how they behave?
Listen, nobody accused anybody of doing it.
Really, that didn't happen?
We're trying to stop it from happening in the future. And that's what Sarah's trying to do, stop it from happening in the future. We have a town attorney that gave us his opinion on it, which is wrong, and it can't be done. There's no will of the board. There's no will of the board.
And right, and that did not just start with this past board.
We're not
It had been
arguing,
going on
we're
for
not
years. It's been going on
arguing,
for 20 years, and if you looked at the information
So
that we
Dan,
gathered,
should
you
it
would have seen
continue?
that.
we're not
What's
arguing.
that?
Continue?
What?
It can't continue.
I agree with
That's what this
you.
is about. It can't continue.
Okay,
Stop yelling.
I agree with you that it cannot continue, but you can't continue on accusing people without having an investigation, and you can't use not ratifying Scott's contract as a rationale for this investigation, which hasn't happened. And that's the problem that I think the
That-
community
that-
has, that's the problem that I have.
That investigation went back to the Board of Education. They're investigating it.
Would they,
We direct, you know, through the town attorney's opinion, it was sent back to the board.
So are you gonna keep pushing it back and forth to each?
Excuse
from
me, you
board
can't
members,
just yell from the
councils,
audience.
from board members?
Okay.
What is,
Listen, we don't have your name and you can't speak out of turn.
it's Sally McCartan and I live on Shinsey Drive.
Well, then you have to wait your turn.
That was me.
okay, thank you.
Dan, thank you. And thank you for the
Good
information that
evening,
you gathered for us.
Chris Mann of Brantford. I have a question for the attorney, Ms. Marino.
Yes, sir.
In your opening statement, you said the town council has no say over the superintendent's contract, is that correct? No direct say?
Correct, that's under the jurisdiction of the Board of Education.
Would you say they have an indirect control?
I don't understand what you mean by that.
Let's take a hypothetical situation
I don't
where
live
you
in a
have
hypothetical world.
I'm sorry?
I don't understand. This body and the Board of Ed have rights and responsibilities pursuant to stant
So when you
charter
have a
and-
sitting Board of Ed person who might have been in favor of extending the superintendent's contract, and then that hypothetical person was removed by the town council, when you say that's an indirect control of the town council of the superintendent?
No. No, so.
I gotta tell you, I went
don't
to Durham
underst-
Fair and stepped in
I don't-
some, but that answer.
I don't, well, sir, to the extent that this body has the authority to remove a member of the Board of Education, you're making a leap, in my view. At this, I have insufficient facts to draw a conclusion that that removal there was a pretext. You haven't given me any facts to rely upon for that. You're assuming facts that you haven't presented. So I can't sit here and draw a conclusion that you want me to, because you're in a hypothetical world.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I'm Lars Sealander. What I would like to go back in history a little bit. My Annis River Bridge goes down. The state charges everybody 10 cents a gallon of gas and they're gonna fix all the bridges. They haven't done it. They tell you guys, they tell us that they're gonna pay teachers' salaries. We're gonna give you money back from the casino. They haven't done it. You guys listened tonight about what they were gonna do a couple months ago when they finally cleared up. Now that's coming back. As a town, we're all here. Each one of you have provided for this town lots of stuff. Vinny's doing a great job up here. Al, if we can put you on every damn building committee, we would never have a problem. All right, all of you work hard. I don't want to see what we see tonight. You've got a problem that's got to get fixed, but you have not only Scott, but Don Winnicky and Bruce Williams, who have worked very hard for this town. Everything that we've had in this town, the library is because we've had somebody with continuity there. Park and Rec is because we had somebody with continuity and it's continued. And it grows and it gets better. We cannot keep stopping. Oh, I forgot about Fran, too. We got Park and Rec. We got Public Works. He's been there for years. When it snows out, other towns can't go to school. We can go to school. This town is great with what they do. What we can't do is take away the continuity that we have, and that's what you're doing right now to not only Scott, but two other people who are very important to the school system. Fix what you gotta fix, but don't put them in limbo. All right?
Lynn Reardon, 33 Durrell Farm Road. Mike, first of all, I want to say excellent work the 2 weeks in Africa. That's amazing. Attorney Marino, welcome. Best of luck to you, sir. To the town council, I am the collateral damage that got voted off, which was fine. Again, I say a blessing and thank you so very much. I had no idea that the Board of Education was a political position. You will find that out, sir, very soon. It's all connected. At one point, I don't think it was, but after I think 2014 became a plan and a plot, and this is all coming to fruition right now. I'll let you figure that all out. But in 2014, keep that year in mind because that's when this all began. It's called retaliation. I love Scott Schoonmaker. He's not my best friend, Al, but he is a good friend. And I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room why. Rose, you asked me why I disliked you. I don't know you to dislike you.
I
didn't ask you.
You did.
Listen,
You did.
listen. Personal attacks on council people.
I'm not
attacks
attacking
on
her.
anything else.
I'm not attacking
I'm
her.
going to ask you to step down, please.
I'm not attacking her.
I'm going to ask you to step down.
I'm not attacking her. What I'm saying is, I don't know her, so I wanted to answer her question because I wanted to do that publicly. I don't know her, so this isn't about liking her or disliking her, okay? It's not. I think to keep Scott Schoonmaker is the best thing for our community. I think it's the best thing for our town. He's been here since 2009. He's done a phenomenal job. Sarah Quarefield said he met all goals 1 month, and then shockingly the next month, she votes not to extend. I don't understand it. He's been accused of being a thief. There's been a lot of nonsense going on. Let's all just get back to business here. Let the Board of Education figure out their problems, and I do think they had problems. But Sarah's in charge now. There will be no problems moving forward. Let's wipe this slate clean. Let's move on. Enough is enough. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
And just to clarify, no, that's okay, Lynn. It's not, you're done. But at the Board of Education meeting, Lynn made a comment, and after the meeting, I asked her, I didn't ask her why she disliked me. I asked her, what did I do to offend her? And she told me, I don't want to talk to you, I'm not talking to you. So I ended the conversation, and I haven't talked to her since. So that's what it is.
So she wanted to mention my name, I will answer her question in regards to that, so.
I see no more. Move on to resignations and appointments. Reappointment of William Gandenzi. Got to remove that. Explain to you. It's
You explained it to me.
Democratic majority. Appointment of Jenna Balsamo to the Board of Education, term to expire 11/12/19.
I make a motion to appoint Jana Balsamo to the Board of Education with the term to expire 11/12 of 19.
And I would like to second that, and I'd like to make a short statement, Mr. Mayor. I would like to second that nomination for Jana Balsamo. Jana, rather. She grew up in North Brantford. She has a strong academic background, particularly has a Master of Arts in museums. She comes from a family with ties to education. She feels strongly about providing good education for children of North Brantford. She has one child in the school system now and another going into the school system in 2019. I firmly believe that she would be an asset to the Board of Education, and therefore I second the nomination.
Discussion?
Yeah, I have some discussion. I don't know her. I did read her resume. I think it's great that she's willing to throw her hat in the ring with what she's joining. So I commend her for that.
All right, roll call?
Mayor Duty.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni.
Yes.
Counselor Candelora.
Yes.
Counselor Diamond.
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin.
Yes.
Counselor Miller.
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Counselor Viglione.
Yes.
Counselor Zampano.
Yes.
Jana, welcome to the Board of Education. Next, we'll move into unfinished business, discussion and action, approval of proposed.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Sorry to interrupt. And again, it's just stuff that surprises me and I don't understand it. When I was looking through materials in preparation for this meeting, the memo that shows up on our page 77, which comes from Counselor Diamond to the town manager's office, asks for reappointments on 6 people. Now, I had thought, and I could easily be wrong, that when someone sends in something like this, it goes on to the agenda. So when I got the agenda and I saw that each of those reappointments was not on here, I was confused. And then I'm further confused now because in looking at the material that was included in our day pack from Town Clerk Lisa Valenti on boards and commissions, page 2 shows that at least some of these people, I didn't go through each one, but at least some of these people have apparently been reappointed. And I don't think we voted on these people.
No, they haven't been reappointed.
Those haven't been reappointed. First of all, there was big confusion because you sent in lists of appointments that you didn't have positions for. You have Board of Fire Commissioners, you have Police Commission, you have Planning and Zoning that you don't have seats for. You already filled your seats.
These are reappointments. This is
You
not
can't, listen,
I am.
there's a Republican majority now. So you can't still have a majority of Democrats on boards and commissions, whether it's a reappointment or not. Those seats go to Republicans. You lost the election.
I know that.
Okay.
I'm aware of that. I'm
So-
trying to.
so the majority-
I'm trying to understand process.
Okay, all right.
Because it's new to me.
Because you had the majority when you had the majority on the council. You no longer have the majority on the council. That means you lose the majority on the boards.
Does it mean that these things go off into the ether, or does it mean that we would take a vote to not reappoint?
No, they go off into.
It goes off into the ether.
Yeah.
And
They serve until they're replaced.
I called Marie and explained that to her.
Okay, well, I didn't hear this, so
Okay.
I'm asking. Because I've got this document, and I was further confused.
Well, I think that page
Well,
is confusing.
that should not even be there. I
Well,
don't know
it's
why.
just-
I understand that, but I think somebody just looking at it quickly could be confused by that
Right.
page.
Well, it's just when their new term would expire, so that
That's
when
what
we
it
do
is.
make the appointment, we get the right date.
But it should say when, if, or something.
Right.
She should blank those out.
Right.
They
That's
should not be in there.
confusing.
Yeah.
Also, and if you look at the charter, the mayor controls the agenda, regardless of majority or not. Councilors putting things on the agenda, it doesn't happen that way. Everything should go through the mayor. It's the
Well,
mayor's agenda.
Anthony,
And-
honest to God.
George, I'm just, listen.
I would send things in.
You're asking, I'm just telling you.
Yeah, I would send
And
things in,
Michael
and they
is
got put
incorrect.
on.
Michael's incorrect by putting.
Yeah, because
things
I let
the
him go
agenda.
on. I get to review the
And-
agenda before it goes out.
If you
So,
review the charter,
If
it
there's,
takes
if,
two counselors or more to add something to the agenda.
if there's a problem with it going on, then I usually call the person that wrote the letter. And now Marie wrote this letter, and I called Marie and I said, listen, there's a Republican majority now, so
Well, I mean, see, this is a
these
good
people
discussion
these
because,
people don't
I
have
didn't know
seats
this.
anymore.
I didn't know the process. So it's good because Tom and Bob, who are new, are getting it right at the beginning. So this is all right, but I just didn't know.
Right.
So I'm asking.
So that's why I called Marie and I explained to Marie.
Okay.
The reason they were removed.
It wasn't shared, so I didn't know.
I can't, unless you want me to call all 9 people, which I don't have time to do during the day, so. I tried to get it
Just
to
asking.
I tried to get it to the person that wrote the letter.
Okay, just asking.
Okay.
But George,
But
that's the
Mike-
politics of it.
Sorry?
That's the politics of it, okay? If you remember, George, listen to me. I'm gonna give you another example, okay? Republican member of Planning and Zoning moved out of town. The Democrats were in control. You put a Democrat on, okay?
Well, that's right.
And you were part of that. You voted
yeah.
for it.
No question
And you
about
replaced
it.
a Republican with a Democrat.
No, well, we moved an alternate.
An alternate.
Into the regular seat, which I thought.
That's correct, but
is
you
what
have
we're supposed
minority
to do.
representation, and when somebody steps down and a different party's in power, it's their option to replace somebody or not.
Just trying to understand the process.
But the agenda is a very important roadmap, and that's why it was set up where the mayor creates the agenda, and it should always go through the mayor. He can remove or add things to the agenda. It's not just anyone sending things to the town manager to add to the agenda.
Well, we've often gotten emails from the town manager asking if we wanted to add something to the
Well,
agenda
that's
with a
incorrect.
deadline.
It's
Okay, but,
incorrect.
so,
It's
that has
incorrect.
happened. It's not like that was the first time that happened.
It's incorrect, because the last 2 years, it was like a box of chocolates.
No, if I catch it, I straighten it out, but,
And
you
so
know.
therefore,
And I try to call whoever sent the request in, to explain it.
So, you
So-
could read Robert's rules, and you could also read the charter, it's right in there.
But moving on, approval of proposed ordinance
Read it.
2017-1, Chapter 40, entitled Fire Department, tabled until November.
Yeah, that item, I still got to tweak that one, that's, and I think maybe to have Vincent take a look at that as well.
So you want to put it till January?
Actually, yeah, we could go to January on that one,
Okay,
just to clear.
let's
the
table it to
schedule.
January. Review of purchase and ordinance, tabled until November.
Yeah, that one, I I brought back, just looking for direction on that in terms of a concept known as best value procurement and a few other tweaks to that. I mean, it's not ready for action for you tonight. I'm just raising the issue and talking with Michelle from purchasing about this idea that, you know, we've gotten into positions where we've had vendors that have been the low bidder, and the performance or quality of work hasn't been there. And we, in one case, have revisited that 3 times. And prefer not to do that, and would like to take a look at best value procurement that says, you know, if there are you know, reasons to this qualify, can it, rather than just extreme bottom line lowest number for the vendor for the bid. And in addition to that, there are some changes that you see about allowing to maybe join other municipalities.
Excuse me, if you're going to talk in the back there, could you just go out in the hallway, because it's hard to concentrate on with all the noise going on in the back. So if you want to talk, that's fine, just please go out in the hallway.
So the other is potentially giving us more flexibility to say, listen, if we don't have a specific bid package, and there's possibly another municipality that has one, maybe if that's been through, you know, a vetting process, that we could join another municipality. That's another idea. And as we got into this issue with the fire hose back months ago, the state didn't have a bid package anymore. They had in the past, but there wasn't one when the chief went to look. There were other states that had them, and so that's another possibility, whether or not we want to be, you know, adding enough flexibility to say whether or not we want to join on another state or another municipality, as long as we're comfortable in knowing that their vetting process or the process for bidding is secure, is up to snuff, so to speak. But they're just concepts and ideas in terms of the purchasing. So I'm just looking for guidance. I'm looking for some comment. I'm looking for your input on that.
Has been reviewed how to remove a vendor, or how to block a vendor that had poor performance in our town?
And no, unfortunately, no. And that's kind of fallen. This is fallen
I mean,
in terms of priority
states
lower.
the lowest responsible
Right.
bidder.
Lowest responsible.
Who determines who's responsible?
Well, ultimately.
I mean, is that by the state or their contractor's license, or is it done by us after the fact?
Done by us in terms of whatever process the town has to determine who's responsible. But I think, obviously, at the end of it, there probably is.
So how big a deal is it to say someone's not responsible?
Normally, you're going to want to have language in your bid package that gives you more latitude to make these decisions, because going with the lowest bidder is not always the best choice, so you don't want to bind yourself. And, you know, you don't want to box yourself into a specific reason why you can disqualify someone. So generally, in the other bid packages that I have with other municipalities that I work with, we have language in there that gives you a little bit more latitude and discretion on how to make that award. So that's something I can review with the town manager. And we can
So Michael, you are bringing him in on this then?
Yeah, I would like to, yeah, absolutely.
And we could eliminate somebody just by past history?
Especially if they've been there 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to speak in the generalizations, so I think everything needs to be looked at specifically, but, you know, we will address it and we'll report back.
All right.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I have a question on the agenda. On the agenda I have for reappointments, there was one for the planning and zoning. Was that taken off, or was there another agenda?
That was taken off. That's a Republican majority.
No, I was going by the agenda. I just looked at the agenda I had that was published, had his name on it. Thank you.
Yeah, so not to crowd the agenda, but I'm thinking, give him some time to look at this for a January item for the purchasing, maybe come back with some recommendations.
Next is review of public hearing status, 1599 Foxen Road.
Right, at some point, council's going to have, we've been through the public hearing, council's going to need to give some direction as to a decision as to which way you want to go. open space or develop it. And you all have a record of both the testimony of the members, residents, I should say, that were present at the hearing, and all of the written comment that came in. So there's, all of that is within the packet. Not that you have to make a decision tonight, but we'll be looking, because that's both item, the current item and the next item about what you do with that parcel. So at some point.
How do we make out on the real estate bid for services?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Not well. We probably will not get any responses to that, because there's nothing specific to a property, is the feedback I'm getting from Michelle, but
That's open until December 20th, is it?
Yeah, right, it hasn't closed, but
Yeah.
the feedback Michelle's getting in terms of the questions she's getting are the fact that they're looking for what properties they're not gonna
Can you check with
bid.
CCM, see what they have for?
I can check with CCM, I'll have to check with the state.
I
and
mean,
see if
there's
they
gotta
have
be,
it.
yeah, there's gotta be somebody that has language that we could mirror off of
Yeah.
for that.
I thought we were listing like 3 properties. Isn't that what we discussed when we were setting up this this?
Well, we have the
thing?
potential for 3 properties.
And I thought we
to
were
rent.
specifying them.
Yeah, you talked a lot about it, but the last vote, I think, was in terms of leaving that open to be determined by the council, I think was the language that was used.
We're looking for somebody to represent us, and then we're gonna give them those parcels.
Yeah, but, I mean, okay, I don't want to beat it, fine.
So should council need any more information on 1599 before making a
Why don't we-
decision?
Yeah, why don't we,
Or just
set
move-
it up for January?
Set up for January.
Did you, Mike, did you advertise it? Do you advertise it? Yeah, for the Realtor.
Yeah, well, the bids are going out, it hasn't closed yet, but their calls are coming in terms of questioning the how that would work, and they're saying that they're unlikely to bid if there's no specific property listed, so that
Yeah,
they know.
that's what we had thought would happen.
Yeah, I mean, because I think they're all.
Can we,
looking
we
at-
can't even put an alternate on that for the 3 properties.
I mean, I'll.
Maybe we could use Facebook.
I'll review with Michelle, look at other
That
sources, and
seems
bring it
very
back to the next
popular.
meeting. Or have a report based on what responses we get from the closing.
You must not be hungry enough. All right,
We
so,
should probably utilize Facebook more. Seems to be.
so D and E, we'll bring that back. Next item is future budget planning initiative.
Actually,
We've skipped over
we skipped, we did C and D, skipped over E.
Yeah, well, E is gonna be, okay. C and D are the same. E is review a contract for renovation in our Brantford Police Department.
Could I make a statement here? I received a call this evening from Dave Palumbo, who was disappointed that he had not been notified that that was going to be on the agenda, and unfortunately, he's caught in a snowstorm somewhere between Canada and Vermont. He was going to try to get here, but obviously didn't make it in time. And he just wanted me to express his disappointment that he had not been informed that that was going to be on the agenda.
Okay. I don't think there's much.
Pardon?
Why didn't you tell him?
Why didn't who tell?
Why didn't you tell him?
Why didn't you tell them?
I
So
don't
they-
think it's my responsibility.
The contract there is with Silver Petroselli. This is what came back.
All right, then why don't we just, since there's no
Very
sense in
low.
discussion, we'll just table it to their next meeting and then notify,
Police Commission.
yeah, Police Commission.
Okay.
Can't say we can notify. Okay, next item is future budget planning initiative.
That's just a placeholder, but one of the things that I think the council, we had talked about in the past, and I'd like to get going, is, as we anticipate the budgetary discussions in the new fiscal year, this discussion about healthcare review plans. And so I know we touched upon that. And I'd like to jump back on that and start that review this month and start to begin to collect information, because I know it was important to the council as we move into a new fiscal year, but also negotiations as well. That is probably a major component of anything that we do budgetarily wise, from a budget sense. So I'll be happy to take that up again.
So how did we ever get off of it?
I
I mean, if you remember, we had a disaster last budget season. The employees didn't know what they were getting. They didn't feel that they had, that the information was gotten out to them. And then Anthony, got to call you out on this one. After we went through the budget, I said, look, we don't want to be in December, January.
I can show you the track of emails. The last one was as recently as 2 weeks ago from the girl from Anthem.
But we were going to bring people in, we were going to meet with the employees, we were going to educate ourselves. What is an HSA? What's this? What's that? What's the group with the other towns?
They won't talk to us until January.
So
that's the answer.
Nobody will come in and educate us on it.
As far as the collaborative we're trying to get into with ACES, they will not talk to us until January. That will not preclude us from getting into July.
So how do we educate ourselves when we have to make a decision by March on it, you know?
I agree.
Well,
But our hands are tied by it. They won't come talk to us. Again, it's a different agent. There's two different agents involved, our agent as well as an agent that is representing the ACES Cooperative. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, the response I got from, they won't come until January to talk to you, but that won't preclude you from getting involved for July 1st.
No, but I think there's opportunity, like I was saying, to look at, we're looking at HSA, we're looking at the consortium, I think we can do some due diligence before we get them into the room to say, listen, what are these other towns' experiences, make some calls, talk about, gathering as much information as we can, and then, obviously the detail will come when we get them in the room, but I think that there's stuff that we can begin to collect and then raise, I think it's just getting
so the only thing
on the
that
subject, really.
was bad last year was our employees felt like they had no idea what we were doing for
The
them.
education of it,
So,
to understand it, yeah.
okay.
And then, maybe we should also start looking at spending freeze, hiring freeze, maybe where there's overlap, where we can share resources, whether it's IT, look at the different departments on both sides, town side, maybe Board of Ed side, to see if there's any way we can consolidate and take away redundancy.
All good points, yeah.
But we need to start doing it.
Yeah, from a spending freeze, I don't think we're at that point yet. I'll certainly sit down and review with Anthony, but our projection, if the state comes through, we're gonna be, we wanna be over, but, it's not a bad exercise to go through. Typically, we don't institute that unless we know our projections are on, a bad trend.
Well,
So to speak.
I don't think it's too early to start counting the pennies.
Oh, no, I don't disagree.
Next item is review of EDC grant writer position.
Yeah, something I just wanted to bring to attention. I know Councilor Miller had raised it. We had talked about, it's in the budget, waiting for the state revenue and the state budget process to settle, and I was able to, thanks to Anthony, make contact with Randy Frank and talk with her. It was the name that was mentioned to us as a possible grant writer. She was at a meeting. I was able to talk with her, and she had since presented a proposal for undertaking grant writing services for us if the council is interested. So I forwarded that to you, and something for your consideration. She is well-versed in Connecticut. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she actually worked for the town of North Brantford at some point in a purchasing function during the Frank Connolly days, I believe.
Correct.
And so she's worked with other municipalities. She does a lot with recruitment and personnel issues, but along the way has written a few grants for other towns. I have not had a chance or opportunity to talk to any of the other towns, but I do know her reputation as very good within the state of Connecticut.
Now, is that, you have it as EDC / grant writer, is this a dual?
Well, yeah, I think
position?
the originally we had talked about, an economic development coordinator and/or grant writer, and she is just a grant writer. Although with her connections within the state of Connecticut, I certainly think that she has some economic development experience or background, I should say. I'm not sure she has any experience as being a coordinator at all, but I think she's very good at writing grants potentially. I'm not, it's just unknown until I start making some calls. So I think that even the Economic Development Commission, I think, would prefer a coordinator. I'm not sure that we'd find a coordinator on a part-time basis for the budget allocation that we have. But Randy Frank is submitted her proposal on an hourly basis. She will not do it on contingency, and I don't think we'd probably find anybody who's going to do it on contingency. But she is not in state any longer, but can communicate certainly via email, and knows the town and the state quite well. So I don't see that as a
In reading over the material, it appears that she's still heavily involved in working in the state, even if her
Yes.
location has been moved out.
Yes.
So it's not as if she's not here.
But just as a grant writer, correct? Not as a coordinator, because.
Oh, absolutely. That's
Because it would be hard as a
that's what it looks
coordinator
like.
living out of state.
Well, it looks like the request that she was responding to was for grant writing, and it's on an hourly basis, which makes it a very controllable event. We don't have any kind of contractual obligations, so you can cut it loose if it doesn't look like it's working. And it's trying something perhaps different to bring in some money that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. I mean, as each of us know, for those people who are heavily involved in a certain area, they can get things done a whole lot more quickly than someone else who's just trying to learn it. So this is what she does. It might be worth thinking about it hard.
I just wanted to differentiate. I had EDC / grant, so I just wanted to know.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I just wanted to know if it was a dual position or a grant writer, because the way it is written here.
Well, it was originally proposed as a position, but I don't see this person responding to take a position. It sounds to me like someone who's responding to do some compartmentalized work, and that's the way I would look at it. I certainly don't think we're in a position to be adding a position.
No.
I think that's what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
When did she move out of state?
I don't know, Tom. I would say it was recently, within the last 6 months, I would say.
Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, all their accomplishments were prior, I think latest was like 2016 maybe, wasn't it? As I'm trying to find my paper, I can't find it. But the hourly thing, it's something to try. It's, you're not locked in, it didn't appear.
This was a separate.
Oh, okay.
It was a separate document.
Almost everything in here seems to be Connecticut work.
Yeah, it was, most of
Yeah.
it was Connecticut work,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so, I mean,
she may have things that are ongoing,
Yeah.
but I don't know that, I
Yeah.
don't know the woman.
We could try her on a contingency basis.
But she
and just
has,
see.
must have a lot of connections.
Yeah, obviously.
Based on,
It's what it appears, yeah.
Then what I suggest is I do some due diligence and bring back prepare a motion for you at the next meeting on the 19th, if you're comfortable, and we can go forward with trying
Yeah, that sounds good.
out.
Moving on, review of investigation and referral to state's attorneys regarding B.O.E. decision.
Yeah, that's just a placeholder that was left over from previous discussions, so.
Right, we
not sure
already
if you wanted-
addressed that.
Yeah, so I think you've.
Next item, new business discussion and action, North Branford High School Boiler Project bid award.
Yes, you have a memo from Michelle Knockwood, two bidders, Rivco and Environmental Control. We came in at, Rivco came in at 138, and that was the recommended low bid. I will say, I don't know if we have Bill Chody in the audience, not here, but I did speak with Bill. He was actually able to get to a school system to check the references and to talk with the school system about the,
So
I think it was
there's
Walton.
quite a difference in price there.
Yeah. The references come back very positive for Revco, and Bill Chody was actually on site at the school for a project that was done recently, and spoke with them, and there were absolutely no problems with the company.
Was that a similar system, stackable boilers?
Exactly, yeah, the same. Only they're doing, I think they put in, he said, 3 boilers instead of the 2 that I think we're looking at. But spoke very highly. They haven't had any issues with that. Any same system, same boilers.
So who has to accept this bid? The Board of Education or the Town Council?
Well, I think the town council, I think we've
Yeah.
funded it in
we
capital, and we bid it out. We're gonna,
Okay.
council's gonna accept and go and run with that.
So are we ready to make a
'Cause I-
motion to accept?
Yes.
Yeah, right, motion
Is there's-
would be in order, and there's nothing prepared. I was still waiting for Bill, wasn't sure if we have any, detrimental comments or anything like
Okay,
that.
well, we can wait then if they're, I know it's been on their agenda that, they're very anxious about getting it replaced, but if we're still waiting for that, then I guess.
No,
we'll wait.
he addressed Bill's concerns today, right? Bill called you today?
No, it wasn't, no, I think he caught me, I think Friday.
And he has no problem with Revco?
None at all.
So we have no problem awarding
And
bid
we
to
have
Revco.
150 within, we're set aside, we're within budget on that.
So are we accepting it with the 2-year extended warranty or just base bid?
Strongly recommended to take the 2-year warranty, according to what Bill gathered from his site visit of the other company, definitely.
Okay,
Did you see the bids or not?
I saw them when they went out, before they went out.
yeah.
I think we should
Do they have
go forward
does
with it.
Rivco have
Okay, I'd like to make a
references?
motion to accept bid number
have references?
Yeah.
For Rivco, they're good.
2017/2018 installation of new high-efficiency gas-fired boilers for North Branford High School from Rivco Construction Company, 10 Donna Drive, Burlington, Connecticut. Base bid of $138,836, and accepting alternate 1 2-year extended warranty at $11,150.
Second.
Mike, did they talk to Bill about completion date, start date, gas line?
No, well, Bill's been in on the discussion, so he's been in the loop, and he knows that this is essentially, I believe, is still a design build, so that the company comes in and,
So we're not gonna see it this heating system season?
tail end of it. if you're lucky. I would think, again, it's not my expertise, but I don't, optimistically, this is not gonna happen until maybe the end
Okay.
of the season.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni.
Yes.
Counselor Candelora.
Yes.
Counselor Diamond.
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin.
Yes.
Counselor Miller.
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Counselor Viglione.
Yes.
Counselor Zampiano.
Yes.
Alright, next item is North Branford Intermediate School Roof Project Bid Award for HVAC.
Yeah, I was hoping this would be ready as well. We do have the bids here. The problem with these responses is in the fact that there is two components. You have the labor cost and the hourly rates that are there, but the material costs in terms of markup are considerably varied from, I think, 15% up to 40%. Now, we're hoping to get more guidance from Horizon Engineering in terms of the breakdown, and I had a late communication from Jonathan Friedman of Horizon today, but haven't had a chance to get into it, and I don't want to rush into this and make the wrong calculation that it's going to be more on mechanicals and markups than it is on the labor costs. So I think I'd like to take a little bit more time, and maybe Councilor Rose can help with this as well, in terms of pinpointing where we think this is going to fall from a labor. And again, I have to probe Mr. Friedman at Horizon in terms of the breakdown in versus labor versus mechanical, because I wouldn't want to take the low bid at 85 and have a 40% markup, and it's predominantly material. Yeah. And I don't think another.
Well, if he's coming in,
Table
see
it to the
you,
next
let
meeting.
me know.
Yeah, please.
Come in, see you.
Yeah, so I'll bring it for the 19th.
Next item is update of 944 Totoga Road.
Yeah, so you have my memo there. I do have additional information. I do not have a date. There is a buyer who is interested in pursuing it. What I'm looking for tonight, I've briefed Vin, and we're going to talk about it, but what I'm hoping we can do is get some direction from the council and a vote to proceed and have the town attorney potentially look at making contact and getting that buyer into a room, and maybe we craft an agreement that they're willing to sign to commit to cleaning up that property. And
Isn't that a zoning issue?
yeah, well, I mean, there is a, as you know, we have
Private sale.
a judgment or a record that allows the town to clean up the property. I think there's some resistance in the council not knowing what's there, that if we can choose an alternative path and work with the potential buyer and/or bank, another crack at it, that we try to get that potential buyer into an agreement to clean that up. If that makes sense. Maybe I'm all wet, maybe that's not the way to go.
Was there or was there not an indication from the potential buyer that they were going to deal with this problem?
Yes.
So why are we looking at undertaking the burden of cleaning it?
Yeah, that's what
Well, no, I'm saying the potential buyer has said to me that they would work and cooperate with the town, and I'm thinking that we want that in some type of document, some type of agreement.
What does that mean, cooperate with the town? Are they going to do the work, or they're going
Yes.
to allow the town to do the work?
They would like to, they're willing to do the work.
Okay.
At least that was a conversation last month. And that person has not walked away or said that they're not interested in doing it. They said they would cooperate with the town and that we would need this meeting to define, at least from the town, she needs to know what that definition of remediation and cleanup is. And I'm suggesting that if we have a willing buyer and willing to talk to us, that I bring in the town attorney and we sit at the table, and if they have representation, fine, we bring that person in and talk about remediation, what it would look like.
But it has to be very strict. I mean, there can't be any loopholes in it because the person might be really slippery. I think they've been slippery in the past. So
I don't know, but I take your point that we would want to be as detailed as.
I mean, we have the
possible.
bank. We have the bank on the hook now, as Cliff said. You know, I would try to go hard after the bank first.
Okay.
And have Vinny look over that file really close. I mean, we got a judgment and everything else on there.
If the judgment no date. So, but
Right.
Vince, once we go down that path and the town does that, and let's say they buy the property and then they don't comply, does that put the town now in the position that, you know, what type of precedent is that setting?
Yeah, this is an issue that, again, I was going to start reviewing tomorrow with the town manager. He and I have had some preliminary conversations about it, and so I have very limited understandings at the moment. But my limited understandings are that the property is currently owned by some form of a financial institution, and that there is a issue with past practices on the property that very well may have been in violation of our land use regulations, whether they be zoning or wetlands, and that the adjoining property owner, I believe the gentleman who stood up to speak, has legitimate concerns about the impact of this particular property to his property. And he obviously would like to have his issues resolved as part of this whole thing. What I am not familiar with at the moment, and I would not be ready to opine on, is what involvement beyond the regulatory administrative land use involvement the town should be involved with. I'd like to review the judicial action that was pending, the order of the court, who is that in favor of, what are the limits of that order. You know, clearly, to the extent the town is bound by a judicial order, the order should speak for itself. That doesn't necessarily end the inquiry because there may be regulatory processes that would probably fall under the jurisdiction of zoning or wetlands, depending upon what the issues are. So I would just ask if and I will be here tomorrow, I will review it. I can give you an update at your next meeting. I'm happy to. Prior to that, I will also have the opportunity to speak with the adjoiner in person so I could get a better appreciation of what his concerns are. Generally speaking, and again, this is this comes down to your judgment. Philosophically, if it's private property, you have to decide whether or not the municipality should be engaging in matters relating to personal private property that go beyond the administrative regulatory practices of the municipality. Otherwise, you're potentially opening yourself up every time there's a private property dispute where you're coming in and being the arbiters of that dispute. And you don't necessarily want to find yourself in that position. So, but before I even get to that point, I think I need to be more informed. Yes.
I'm not certain, but I think that Mr. Marino encapsulated what the previous town attorney has said about this particular case and the problem of it. So I think he's in agreement. From what you said.
Just so everyone's clear, I'm not ready to opine.
I understand that. I understand. I'm just reflecting on what it is that you said.
It is probable, but I reserve my opinion until I look at everything.
Yeah, and you know, it got compounded tonight in my hearing because when Mr. Potter spoke, he expressed a lack of confidence in the potential remediation of the property. And I'm just expressing concern because I would like him to be very confident.
I think, ideally going forward, we want to set up a process that not only protects the interests of the town,
Yeah.
but if possible, can address the interests of the constituents. But we have to balance them both. So I would say before you're at a point where you can make an informed decision based upon a recommendation of me, I'm not there yet. But if it's not this direction, there may be other directions through the regulatory process to address the concerns. So, but I'll provide you an update next meeting.
Thank you. Next item is review of 824 referral for 2017-2018 capital improvement plan.
Good evening. If you focus on page 156 of your packet, that's the 17-18 fiscal year, and that's the only one that really has an impact on the current year CIP. There are 7 items that are different in that version versus what you see in your adopted budget. The first 3 relate to the fact that as part of the state budget being settled, we did get our $301,000 grant for municipal projects. So those are items that we've identified. The police station generator goes back to 1992. As the manager had mentioned earlier, we were trying to apply for a grant to help the state offset some of that. The generator at Company 1 doesn't function for the entire building. That's been an issue identified. We tried to get that last year, but didn't put enough money in the budget. Mr. Marola has identified 3 public works trucks that need to be replaced, 550, a 350, and a pickup truck to replace ones that have been rotted out. Item number 4, painting Reynolds Beers House, actually should be $16,000. That's already been completed. Item 5, similarly, has already been completed, the post-tension work at Norfolk Park, or approved by the council, I should say. Item 7, I'll jump 6 for a minute. Item 7 has also been approved by the council, the Stanley T. Williams multipurpose courts. Item 6 is seen as an insurance policy. What Mr. Marola mentioned last year was all that work we put into the new basketball court at Memorial Field. He noticed that there were snowmobiles and the like driving over that during the snow. And we invested a significant amount of money into that park. So to put some fencing around the basketball court to keep snowmobiles and other vehicles off that course seems to be a wise investment. So those are the 7 items that differ from the adopted plan that was passed when the budget was passed. And I would suggest, again, I'll alter that item 4 to the $16,000, the true cost that it is, and then we send it to P&Z for an 824 referral, and then when it comes back, bring it back before this body. Any questions?
Well, so all the funding for this, for all of these items,
It's already
when it
been done.
comes back to us, is already set. Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay.
Correct. There's no new money going in.
Anthony, sorry, make you sit down. Is there any money left in the capital improvement from like last year we didn't carry over?
Yes.
Or,
Yes, there is.
will we be able to get an accounting of that?
We sure could.
All right.
I have it on. I'll put it in the agenda for the next packet.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we have a suggested motion.
I'd like to make a motion, be it hereby resolved that the North Branford Town Council instructs the Treasurer Finance Director to forward the capital improvement plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their review pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 8-24 and bring it back to the Town Council upon receipt of their action.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni.
Yes.
Counselor Candelora.
Yes.
Counselor Diamond.
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin.
Yes.
Counselor Miller.
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Counselor Viglione.
Yes.
And Counselor Zampano.
Yes.
Next item is contingency appropriation, fuel tank at Stanley T. Williams Community Center.
The fuel tank at Stanley T. Williams School, where the tank that's in the ground has to come out, blah, blah, blah. But we need to move the tank from Public Works up to Stanley T. Williams in order to accomplish that. We're under orders now from DEP. Well, actually, Mike, it's coming up very soon, right?
Okay.
So we either repair the tank in the ground, that's gonna cost us 10 grand. That's gonna be taken out of the ground next year. Or we move the tank up there for 6,000 and hook up above ground tank and then deal with the tank in the ground. In this coming budget, we're gonna have to put money in to remove it.
Which you already have a pad for, Drew?
Yes.
So it's just moving,
The
crane in
pad
it?
is part of the tank, so that's gotta get moved up, the tank's gotta get moved up, and the stairs, and then our guys are gonna tie it all to the school, to the rec center / school.
So then they'll use that tank and when we do it in the budget, we'll take the underground one out, but that can stay in there until.
Well, we're gonna use the oil in that and fill the tank. You know,
Right.
we're trying to get clarification from DEP. That has to come out by 2019.
Has DEP got back to you yet, Mike?
No, I submitted a letter to them and am hoping a favorable decision of the council for the money, and then I can state to the state that we're proceeding, and hopefully that will suffice for them, that we have a plan, and then I can give them the detail of the plan and timetables of when we'll have that accomplished.
If I recall, the letter that they sent, there were fines attached to it, correct?
If we don't do something, right.
And there was also a timetable they gave.
Right.
So I think that a letter should definitely be sent right away to make sure, you know, because we could end up getting hit with these fines and whatnot.
Well, if we get the tank up there and show progress, I'm sure they're gonna.
Yeah, I've sent the
Yeah.
initial letter, I've had conversations with the.
But it's always good to put it in writing.
Oh, he did,
you know,
yeah, I
if
did,
it's
and then we'll
not,
follow
you
up
know.
pending tonight's vote, if it's, positive, and then we'll have a secondary communication and
Will
follow up.
Will they allow us, even if the tank is still on the ground, pumped out, using the other tank, allow you to leave it in the ground, then remove it later?
I think as long as we get it cleaned out, that's the question that we don't know.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try, well, we stopped putting oil deliveries, we're trying to get it down.
Right.
So we don't have that much oil, but the remaining of good oil, we'll be pumping into the new tank.
Sure.
And then, once we get that done, then we have to get it clean.
Right.
And then the question is, do we fill it there, or
Yeah.
does that come out of the ground?
Because you're
I
gonna probably
believe
have
it's
to,
well.
you're probably gonna have to do a few soil
Oh,
samples
yeah.
and
When we did that, we
whatnot,
had done
and,
15 at a time.
right,
So that means they would definitely probably tell us to take it out.
you know. But I would definitely have a paper trail, I mean, going to the state, you know, back and forth to make sure.
Yeah, so,
you know.
I mean, it's $6,000 really for moving it up there. We have to
Yeah.
get a crane in there to swing it into the spot it's
Yeah.
gonna go.
If I remember correctly, though, the fines are pretty hefty, like that they were
Yes.
talking about.
Yeah, they were.
So, I would address that, right, I mean,
We have a suggested motion.
I'd like to make a motion that the town manager is hereby authorized to appropriate from reserve for contingency, account number 101-4703-7600-0000, and transfer into the appropriate accounts as soon as possible for the following purpose: STW Community Center oil tank, $6,000.
second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor Duty?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Angeloni?
Yes.
Counselor Candelora?
Yes.
Counselor Diamond?
Yes.
Counselor Fawnin?
Yes.
Counselor Miller?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Counselor Viglione?
Yes.
And Counselor Zampano?
Yes.
And next item, citizen statements and petitions.
Hi, Elizabeth Kaplan, 1936 Middletown Avenue. First of all, I want to thank the council for their consideration on the grant writer. When we had proposed a economic development coordinator, certainly the grant writer was something we thought all town departments could benefit from. I spoke to Mike regarding the position today, and I asked him how the hourly pay rate would work. Would the person be paid while they were researching grants? And he said no. She would only be paid as she was in the process of writing grants. The different town departments would be giving her information on different things that they might need, that, and with online, to be honest, to have a grant writer in state, I mean, that would certainly be wonderful, or in the area. But everything is done online these days, and it wouldn't necessarily be a networking thing. So I think to even try for a period of time, maybe you give it a year, and to pay an hourly rate, I think would be well worthwhile, given these opportunities. And it sounds like, I did not read her resume, but it sounds like she's been very successful. So that's number one. And number two, regarding the grant writer, the economic development coordinator, we still are talking about this at EDC. And I would be more than willing to speak to the EDC coordinators in both Guilford and Brantford, who have been very successful in development in their towns. And they do work very closely with their economic development commissions. And one is part-time, Guilford is part-time, and Brantford is full-time. And I know we've come before you and discussed this. So I would be willing to research to see if there could be some data drawn from, with them being, especially the one in Guilford, which is only a 24-hour a week position, to see what kind of success he's had given the amount of hours. And I know he tries to stay to that, that hourly, not more than 24 hours a week. And he does a lot of networking. So I'd be willing to do some research and speak with him to get a sense of what he's been able to bring to the table for the money that they pay him. So that I'd be happy to do that. And just on a side note, there was a lot of discussion earlier about majority party and boards and commissions, and I certainly respect the majority party precedent, where the majority party comes in and boards and commissions become that majority, and I get that. And currently, and I did look on this today and yesterday, all of the boards and commissions currently, except for Police Commission, Planning and Zoning, and Economic Development, are either split, 2 Rs, 2 Ds, and unaffiliated, or majority Republican. And I also will tell you, on January 5th, 2016, when the Democrats became the majority, all of the Republican appointments were put through without, we felt that everybody that was being put up for reappointment were doing a good job, and that is why they were reappointed. So I just think that's important for the new members to know, not good or bad, but we did break with precedent, quite honestly, because we want to see the town moving forward in a positive way. And I know you do too, and I can certainly understand where you're coming from. And we did replace Mr. Hultgren with Tricia Mace, who, by what Al had said a few meetings ago, that she's doing a very good job. She was, taking Fran Leskovich's place while she was out ill for a period of time. And it is not easy to come by people that want to serve. It's a lot of time. There's a lot of sweat equity that goes into positions. It isn't just doing your monthly meeting. And, you're going to do what you're going to do in a few weeks, but I would love to continue on serving in economic development. I love it. We're a great group. To us, it isn't political. It's about 5 people, 3 of whom work full-time, but spend a lot of time outside of their working time to try to make things go forward as volunteers without having that ability to go to a lot of meetings. But we are really, really trying to meet with businesses, and we're trying to be creative to serve the businesses in this community and bring new businesses to our community while keeping the bucolic nature. We understand what North Brantford is all about. So thank you.
Thanks.
No more land issues. I want to recognize a couple town employees. All our town employees are really motivated. But Fran and Lauren, we had our 2nd annual Alger Farm Christmas Follies, I'd like to call it. We over-prepared, but we were under-prepared. It was beyond fantastic. Lauren can tell you. I mean, we were using a small hayride trailer last year. We upgraded to a huge one, and it would still, it bothers me when kids have to wait 40 minutes for a hayride. We've already got plans for 2 hag wagons and 2 tractors for next year, but again, it's this town, it's the people, it's the kids. I love doing it because you get little kids there that are having the time of their life in the center of our village or community, whatever you want to call it, and
it was enormously well attended, wasn't it?
Yes, everybody had a great time. So it's only going to get bigger. I mean,
It was astonishing the number of people there.
yeah, and discouraging for me though, because we thought we had planned to cut the hayride line down, and it didn't happen. And I don't like that. When that happens, kids shouldn't have to wait 40 minutes when you're only going to be there a couple hours anyway. So we're going to take more drastic. If we have to rent Tilcon's train, we'll do it. But I mean, but you know what? Without these people, nothing happens. So it's always great to, Franny, you know, he's always there, got the answers. What do you need? With Lauren, let's try this. Sure, why not? What do we got to lose? And so it's rewarding. It's fun. It costs a little of your time, but when the kids get on there and they smile and they sing, and it's just well worth it. So again, next year, the first Friday in December, be prepared for traffic jams and a good time. Thank you.
I have one complaint.
What's
My
that?
nephew was upset that Frosty got the ride on every ride, and he only got the ride once.
There's a long story about Frosty. That's our family float. For 10 years, we've always done Brantford's parade. Dale Izzo invites us down. We're kind of inbreds down there, and every year we've had Frosty on our float. So that was a repurposed float that we had used on the back of the hay. And you're right, Frosty goes everywhere as we go. So yeah, you're right. He got the corner seat.
That was his complaint. Frosty rode every time.
Yeah, that's right. And yes, but we already said we'll go as late as we have to, as long as everybody still wants to ride.
Thank you. Thank
No,
you
we,
for your time.
but I loved it. I had more fun than anybody did, I'll tell you that. So again, but that's the good side of town. Sure, we have other issues we've got to work through, but everybody had a good time that night. So it's only going to get bigger. So plan to come, traffic jam, come early. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one thing that I'd like to be added to the agenda for next meeting under new business. There have been some actions from people on boards and commissions over the last few months, and in checking our town charter, the Ethics Commission does not cover the actions. And in talking to Lisa Valenti, she said what we could do is have a code of conduct, because we do not have that, and that would be done by ordinance. So I would like to get some information as far as what a code of conduct would look like, what other towns have as a code of conduct, and what the procedure of that would be.
Okay.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.